We're good? Okay. So good morning, everyone. We're going to call to order the Wednesday, March 20th, 2019 Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting. The first matter is if you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So welcome everyone this morning. I'm hoarse, but I'm not sick. I went to a fundraiser Saturday night where it was pretty loud and we talked for a lot of hours, and so it seems like I go hoarse. But anyway, hopefully you can hear me. The first order of business is citizen input on anything that isn't related to a hearing. And I think we have two requests from Jan Olson and Ed Barbeau. So Jan, you want? Well, it doesn't matter. Yeah, that's fine. Ed, it doesn't matter who comes first. It's just public testimony.
Shall I sit?
Yeah, come on up and sit down and give your name for the record and then proceed. You got about 3 minutes to.
My name's Ed Barbeau. I'm a resident of Deschutes County. There's an issue that's been percolating around for a few years, and I think all of you are aware of it. We've been talking between us about tax deferrals for farm use. EFU properties are given the ability to get quite a discount on their taxes, but it is a deferral. It is not a discount. That deferral is usually certified at the time that they ask for that deferral with a sheet that says we're going to do $650 worth of farming on that property. We've isolated about 3,700 farms that are getting that deferral, but they're not really farming. If you start stacking up over the years the amount of deferral, the amount of discounted taxes that they're paying, we're talking in the neighborhood of $95 to $100 million in uncollected taxes that we feel are kind of going under the rug here. There's no mechanism in place by the county to tell these people or ask these people if they're actually farming about $650 per year worth of farming, okay? So $100 million is a lot of money. It's not a discount. These people are actually deferring these taxes and they're adding up. So what I would like to know is there any interest from the county commissioners in amending what I see as a big problem? You know, $100 million could go a long way to solving some of the problems in Deschutes County. It could go a long way to making it a little bit more fair for the rest of the citizens here in Deschutes County who don't get these deferrals. And if they're getting the deferrals on an unfair basis, this is something that I think each and every one of you commissioners ran on as fiscal conservatancy. Patty, you said you're a numbers girl. This is right up your alley. I think you guys could look like heroes here, but it's not going to be super popular with the people who are getting these deferrals. In fact, I've talked to a few of them, and most of them don't realize that it's actually a deferral that they would owe at some point if it's proven that their farms aren't actually, farms for profit. This happened to a friend of mine recently, and he owes a little bit of money to the county on a sale. And so that's another part of this that I think is needing attention from you guys. Let's see. It's been brought to your attention over the years. Besides that, it's been brought to your attention, or the commissioner's attention, prior to you guys being on the county boards. So anybody have a question for me? Yes, sir.
You mentioned we. Who are you representing today? Or
I'm just a citizen, and I'm looking at a situation that I feel is unfair to the rest of the citizens here in Deschutes County. If they're not farming, if they're not actually doing that $650 a year, they shouldn't be getting a deferral. So most of these guys have been doing this for 15, 20 years. And the county has no mechanism for looking at this and saying, hey, guys, by the way, show me a tax form that says you've declared $650 a year in income.
I understood. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Jan Olson.
Thank you. My name's John Olson, Deschutes County resident. I'm going to just follow up with Ed. I'm the one that's been doing this for the last few years. You're all very aware. We have the documentation in place, the names, the account numbers of those participating in this program. It goes a little bit further than that, and we've been through this before, that the county doesn't have the mechanisms to look at whether someone is actually farming or not. It goes a little deeper with saying that some of these people are not eligible for farming. The owners, the actual owners of those properties, the lien holders, primary lien holders, forbid commercial farming practices. There's no accountability for this, but in fact, it's FDIC mortgage fraud. We're seeing members of the president's administration getting prosecuted for this right now, the exact same crime. It's been going on in Deschutes County for many years. The media now at this point, we have the documentation, been kind of sitting on it for the last little while, but we're going to move forward hoping to work in partnership with the county to identify those parcels and those people and hopefully bring amends to this. It's going to be painful, but fraud is never fair for anyone to just allow happen. To perpetrate this and allow this to continue is, I see, negligence on the county's part. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a little more than $100 million. We can get the actual numbers, and we're actually working on that. If you guys are interested in going forward, we're just hoping for urgency on this and taking steps towards a resolution, perhaps a public hearing. There's definitely going to be public awareness, and we're hoping that you guys can be in front of this problem instead of chasing it from behind. So we're just giving you the opportunity. Today's the first time we brought this up publicly in this format, so hopefully we can move forward in a positive direction.
I have a question, and maybe it's for Ed, but maybe you know too. He said, I think the number was 37.
Well, there's
Unders or not.
500 people that are not eligible for farming. 6,000 of those people basically are doing the right thing. They unwound those deferrals from those parcels. We've identified about 3,700 people who are basically lying and saying, yeah, we're farming this commercially, but they're not eligible to. They have contracts in place that say they can't use that for that parcel anymore. You get a deferral because you're leaving the farm activities in place. It's a benefit to the county to have those parcels under farm. That's the point of the deferral program. The minute they slap a residential mortgage on there, they're not allowed to commercially farm anymore. They should not be eligible for those deferrals. But it's a wink, wink, nod, nod. And we all know this. It's a simple, all the county asks for is a statement of affidavit. They ask for no documentation to prove anything. If those individuals were brazen enough to submit a Schedule F, that's traceable fraud. They're going to go to jail for that. So we understand that this is a real problem. It's obviously not going to get solved today. I've been working on this for 4 years, but we have the documents to bring to bear, and we're hoping to move forward now.
So my specific question was, when you say 3,700 are not farming, are those in reference to the,
I'm not saying
they're not allowed, well, Ed said that, so I could ask him that. Do you mean that, I think he said not farming, as opposed to, so you haven't really gone out there and said there's no farm there. You're saying they have mortgages that
Yeah, they're contracts that
saying
say
they're not allowed to
this
farm.
has nothing to
Okay.
do with the individual the contract between that individual and the bank. This happens on the secondary market.
Yeah, okay.
When we have a $500 million bundle of loans, they're all supposed to be conforming, the same. There's not supposed to be a farm in there or any commercial properties. So when Chase buys from Bank of America a $500 million bundle of mortgages, they all have to be exactly the same. They're conforming. When those projects are in there and they're not accounted for, it creates problems on the secondary market, and that's when the FDIC steps in.
And you mentioned that last week.
Yeah, I mean, we've had private conversations. I mean, Nick knows about this. Everybody knows about this. Is it time? I'm hoping it's time.
We got to cut off the public comment.
Yep.
I can't remember if we mentioned last week or asked if you've talked with our assessor's office about this.
Yeah, I talked to Scott 3 or 4 years ago, and he told me there's no ability for the county and no mechanism for them to hold them accountable because it's a contract between a private entity and a bank. However, if it's a $100 million loss to the county, perhaps there should be some sort of accountability, documentation, something.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank
So,
you, John.
if there's anybody here that wants to talk about any other public comments that aren't related to the hearing we have scheduled today, now's the time to do it. You can fill out a form after you speak, but otherwise we're going to move on. Oh, yeah, do you have some? You want to come? And then afterwards, if you'll grab one of those forms and turn it into Sharon, that'd be great.
Good morning and happy Easter. I guess that's coming down the road anyway, spring today. I'm here, most of you know I'm on the Planning Commission. I'm here as a private citizen today from Terrebonne. So,
Can you say your name for the record?
Dale Crawford, 1494 Northwest Odom Avenue, Terrebonne, Oregon. I have had the pleasure of working with a group of citizens in the Terrebonne area for some highway renovations through the community. And I have done that since day one of the first meeting. So I'm under the impression that there's a group of people that are communicating to the board about their opposition to the plan that's provided by ODOT. And I want just to share a couple things with you. I think I represent what I would feel is the silent majority, those people that are unwilling to really get involved in public debates. So Terrebonne has a serious traffic issue, which I think we all know. At our first committee dealing with Kettleson and ODOT, we identified 6 goals from the community. These were community-wide goals. We sat around tables and discussed these goals. Number 1, mobility. So we need to have transportation for all folks coming through Terrebonne to Bend, wherever they want to go, Smith Rock, whatever. Kettleson and ODOT come up with 2 solutions. One, a couplet, and another one, a 5-lane. So I'm going to talk about those 2. On the mobility, the couplet meets 5 evaluation criteria in 3 of 4 elements. So the 5-lane only met in 4 categories, so it's a little bit less. In the safety issue, the couplet met the criteria in all of them. In accessibility, both couplet and 5-lane met the single criteria that is an accessibility, getting on and off. For the cost, the couplet meets 2 of the 3 categories, partially meets in 1 with a cost of approximately $22.5 million, and there is a $20 million budget from ODOT. The 5-lane is at $25.9 million and does not meet 2 of the 3 goals in the cost category. In economic viability, everyone wants Terrebonne to succeed and be a nice little community. The couplet meets 2 of the 3 and partially meets 1 of the criteria. The 5-lane only meets 1 and does not meet in 2 of the criteria for economic vitality. In community and livability, which is a big concern, they both have the same category, meeting in 1 and partially meeting in 2. So the couplet, and I've talked to many people, it's not a perfect solution, but it's a better solution based on the people that I have talked to and the majority of the people that have been to the meetings than the 5-lane through the center of town. Couplet meets 11 of the 16 criteria. The 5-lane only meets 2 of the 16 criteria. So there's a big difference. I do not know what the opposition, the Stop ODOT group is trying to accomplish. I have talked to a few of those folks and I have not been able to get what their solution would be. Something does have to be done.
We kind of need to cut this
Okay.
off. But,
I'm just going to say, if I may, Mr. Henderson, this solution is based on data, and it's well thought out, and it modernizes, beautifies, and solves safety issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have had a number of people do what you've done today and tell us their points of view. And,
Right.
At least, and a couple of the commissioners have been to some of the meetings, and
Yeah, I'd
they're
like
trying
to
to, yeah.
answer.
So, yeah, but appreciate you coming and
Yeah.
and giving that viewpoint. And
Thank
we'll
you.
see you.
I'll fill out the sheet and get it over here.
We'll see you Thursday, too.
Yeah,
I think we're
tomorrow.
in a joint meeting. Yep, tomorrow. Okay. Any other public comments? Okay, so the next order of business is the consent agenda. Do either commissioners have anything to pull or any changes to it?
There's 10 items on here, a bunch of minutes, and I move approval of the whole set.
I second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So our first action item is a consideration of board's signature of letters appointing members of the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund Advisory Committee. I don't know, is anyone from that committee that we're appointing here today?
Might want to
I don't,
acknowledge the agenda proposed addition, just so people understand what's going on at 11.5.
well, I was going to just do it when we got done, but,
Yeah, because
so,
after
with
this
regard.
is 11.5, which is addition to the agenda. That's all I was just.
Yeah, so we're going to, after we do this, which is fairly brief, we're going to do the solid waste franchise resolution. So for those of you that came for that. And then I believe that the health department is here for a couple of early matters. And then we're going to take up the request from yesterday after the hearing. So is there anyone here from the statewide Transportation Improvement Fund Advisory Committee? We didn't ask people to come, but we just put it on the action item so we could just talk briefly about it. This is a committee that is funded with dollars from the latest transportation bill, and it provides that a committee that will be set up to help with fund some new transit options, and we're the, I guess, governing body of these funds, or they come through the county. COIC is going to be in charge of distributing those in this advisory committee, and we just want to thank everybody that has been appointed to this body. We had a lot of applicants, which was exciting. We tried to get a diverse group of people from different kind of career choices, as well as the people that met the statutory requirements of this committee under the law. So just wanted to acknowledge that. Either the other commissioners want to add anything to that?
This is our 0.1% payroll tax, started last July, so the funds have been accruing since then. And once this statewide transportation improvement fund proposed project list gets approved, then dollars will be given to each jurisdiction. They are created by the payroll, so it's the urban areas and the rural areas. There's different fund creation horsepower in those areas, but I do support the fact that we're going to provide intercity connections, that fixed route system in Bend, and improvements in the system that's going to benefit us all.
Mr. Adair?
And these are new programs that they're going to be working on. So it's not going to be used for anything that's in existence currently. It will be something new, and hopefully it's going to facilitate doing a better job. There's a need in different areas, and we definitely need to improve. So thank you.
Yep, thank you. So, I'd entertain a motion to sign that.
Would you like to?
I move that we sign the board signatures for the letters appointing members. Do you want me to read their names?
Sure.
Okay, to the State Transportation Improvement Fund Advisory Committee, Susan Altman, Andrea Brialt, Ken Thorpe, Jonathan Bullock, Steve Wilson, Katie Bauer, Inman Simons, Cynthia Townsend, Zachary Bass, Kelsey Rook, Andrew Davis, Ryan Couch, and Matthew Schmitz.
And I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion?
No.
Okay. And we want to thank all those people for being willing to serve on this. Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. So we're going to insert an item 11A, the solid waste franchise transfer, I guess I'll call it, and we have a resolution on that. Let's see, would this be just removal and approval, or do we need to do anything further than that?
Really, whatever the board prefers, but yes, there would need to be a motion for
Tim's
order
interest.
number 20
Before you,
-010.
okay, before you start, if there's anybody else that's come for the hearing that's going to take place this morning, if you'll fill out a blue form over here and get it into Sharon, then we'll call you for public input. Go ahead, Tim.
Good morning. I'm Tim Shimke. I'm the Director of the Department of Solid Waste. On March 5th, 2019, we received notice that Bruce and Brad Bailey, who are owners of several companies operating within our solid waste system here in Deschutes County, have decided to sell their company to Allied Waste Transfer Services of Oregon, who is doing business as Republic Services of Oregon. Deschutes County Code provides for this type of a transfer, providing that the transferor has no outstanding obligations due to the county, and that the transferee meets all applicable requirements of a franchise. The Baileys are in good standing with the county. We've received their most recent franchise fees. I would note that it's an ongoing business, so those companies are incurring fees on a daily basis. And we in the past, we've worked out a process where on the date of closing, we'll generate an invoice for any outstanding fees at that point, and we'll even things out at that point. So going forward, it's clean. Republic Services is a very qualified firm, very large firm doing business across the country. They have extensive collection inside Oregon, again, as well as out around the country. They have provided me a sample certificate of insurance that they would submit to us, which has limits that are far above what's required in the code. Specifically, I'll cite the 7 requests. Request to approve the transfer of the High Country Disposal franchise to Republic Services. High Country does businesses in Redmond, Sisters, and the Black Butte area. They've requested that we approve the transfer of Ben Garbage collection franchise, which is North Bend and Tumalo, to Republic. They requested the assignment of Deschutes Transfer Company's interest to Republic. Basically, this is an approval of an agreement between Ben Garbage or between Deschutes Transfer and the 4 franchises in the county. Those franchises had to agree to let Deschutes Transfer transport waste outside of their franchised area to not landfill or to Bend. They've also requested that we assign to Republic DT's interest in an operational contract that they have with the Department of Solid Waste for operational assistance that they do at Negus Transfer Station with us. They requested a consent of assignment of Deschutes Recycling, which operates the recycling area and the compost area at not landfill, to Republic through a license with Deschutes County. They've asked that we consent assignment by BGR to Republic, by Ben Garbage to Republic, interest in an agreement between them and the Lapine franchise. Ben Garbage operates a medical waste collection and disposal operation. They again needed permission from Lapine Disposal to enter their franchise area to retrieve that waste. There was one other request to transfer High Country's interest in a three-way agreement between High Country, the City of Sisters, and Deschutes County for operation of the Sisters Depot. That agreement expired in 2018, and there's no agreement currently. I do not anticipate entering into an agreement in the future. So that's the one request that staff recommends that we not approve, since it's no longer an existing agreement. The rest of the requests we feel should be approved, and we make that request.
Good.
Questions?
Thanks for coming today. For people in attendance and watching, we were briefed on this on Monday, and we're explaining these assignments, et cetera, and we kind of asked most of our questions then, and we just want to again thank the Bailey family and the entities that are doing the transferring for their long time of service, and in a variety of ways in our capacities that touch us all in this county and have for many years. And we're hopeful that Republic, which has, as you said, a large presence in Oregon and other counties, continues that tradition. And so we look forward to that. And some of them are here today. So thank you again for your help in the past, and their attorneys here also has worked with them for a long time, and thank you for that. So, Commissioner Dare, any comments?
I would just concur with what Commissioner Henderson said, that this looks like we have a company that actually is coming in. They might be national, but they really realize that it's important to be part of our community. And I was really pleased to hear that when they said that, meeting their leadership the other day.
Okay, thanks. Mr. DeBon?
We always celebrate our cost-effective solid waste system here in Deschutes County. I've learned, talking to people around the country, our $55 is kind of that tipping fee number, but it's very cost-effective, and we've got a great system and great partners picking up that solid waste from around the county. We've got our one facility, not landfill, which is something they're going to look at the next generation of that. So these are big choices. As I say, I want to thank the Baileys and the whole company. I've got to know different employees in the company over the years too. So great service, and welcome to the new company. Going to provide these services for the citizens of Deschutes County.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to.
So that whole thing is wrapped up in an order number 2019-010. So I'll move that order transferring solid waste franchises and consenting to identified assignments.
And I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
No?
Commissioner DeBone?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you.
Go. Thank you.
So our next item for consideration is a request from our health department for a SAMHSA SOC grant application. It says here that I guess Janice Garceau will present that.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I am Janice Garceau, Deputy Director of Deschutes County Behavioral Health, and I'm here with, I will let her introduce herself, actually.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Elizabeth Renteria Holden. I'm Program Manager of Children's Services for Deschutes County Behavioral Health.
So this morning, we're here to ask the board's consideration and permission to apply for a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration grant. And I'm going to read the name of the grant because it's very long, but the grant is entitled Expansion and Sustainability of the Comprehensive Community Mental Health Services for Children with Serious Emotional Disturbance. In effect, these are grant funds intended to expand the system of care specifically designed to address the needs of children with serious emotional disturbance. So the grant in particular is available to both states and county governments or county entities. For county entities, we can apply for up to $1 million in grant funds per year. It's a 4-year grant. The grant does allow for 20% of grant funds to be expended on data evaluation, analysis, and reporting and performance assessment, which is often a costly aspect of providing these sorts of services that are not covered by grants. It also allows up to 30% for infrastructure if we choose to expend the dollars in that way. Our intention is to fund additional positions which would accomplish some of the required positions of the grant, which is a project director, which we'd fill with a behavioral health specialist too, a lead family care coordinator, another required position, which we would fill with a behavioral health specialist 1, and also hire an additional clinical information systems analyst, 2 care coordinators, and 3 peer support specialists for this grant project if we are funded. Questions?
Any questions?
Well, I guess this is an application to Deschutes County, and we just happen to be kind of the right size to have the horsepower to even apply for something like this, because it's kind of big, it looks like, the project.
Yes, it is. And the grant in particular calls out communities that have already done some of the collaborative work that we've done in this county that, to my knowledge, other counties in the state of Oregon have not done. So we are really well poised to compete for this grant. And we've learned from the state of Oregon that they are not applying. So we won't be competing with our neighbors.
So some of the history and capacity of Deschutes County even gets us to the qualifying
In particular, our work that we've done with our first episode psychosis program, our ESA program, I think we are one of the few in the nation that has already enfolded it into system of care, which is one of the requirements of the SAMHSA grant and part of a national movement. So we are, I think, particularly well poised. But, you know, SAMHSA being what it is, it's always.
Still an application, yeah.
Still an
Yeah,
Understood.
it's still an application.
Yes.
So we're allowed to apply for $1 million a year, is what you said? Even though they're saying that if you're a state, you could apply for $3 million a year then?
Correct.
But we're limited to the $1 million?
We're limited as a smaller entity to $1 million per year.
Okay, all right.
So, you have other questions?
No, I just, it's 8 full-time employees then for the program?
Yes.
Okay.
So is this seems like we do SAMHSA grants regularly. Have we done this grant before, or is it a brand-new grant?
We have not done this grant in this county before.
And do we have people already doing these services?
It
And
would be really just an expansion of what we're doing.
It's
to meet
expansion.
Yeah. Mhm.
And how many people do we currently have in doing these kinds of services?
Well, if I'm reading it correctly, it would be their entire intensive use services team, which would be about 24.
So we'd be going from 24 to 32, so it's, so I see that there's a matching component, and for every, basically, if we got the $1 million a year, the way it works, the first 3 years, we pay a third of $1 million each year, and then the last year, we pay a full $1 million. So for the $4 million we get from the federal government, Deschutes County comes up with $2 million.
The match
Yes.
is allowed to be in kind.
So current positions would be able to.
So that was part of the consideration to even apply. When we see a request for matching funds, that's always a concern for us. But the fact that the matching funds in this particular grant are allowed to be in-kind services.
Yeah, I see that, but I didn't know that it
Yeah.
didn't mean we didn't have to spend money somewhere. So how are we financing the 24 people now? Is that a combination?
Contract with Pacific Source, OHP capitation, billing that we do, some grant that we already.
So we have a current structure of ways of various funds we use to provide the 24 employees that do some of this kind of work. And you're saying there wouldn't, and now are they any of those programs falling off over the next couple of years, or are they continuing, or?
Those programs are continuing. And the system of care that we have for wraparound services that include the programs that Liz is the manager of are already at the maximum of capacity in terms of fidelity caseloads and workload. So this really would allow for us to meet the actual need that's been identified in the community and is continuing to be identified that these programs have not always been able to meet.
And in terms of funders, I think it's a national and state level priority that if programs were to continue to be funded, these would be the ones that would be funded robustly.
So is there any of this that we're doing here that's part of the CCBHC?
No, however, being a CCBHC probably makes us that much more competitive for this application. So the fact that we are an existing CCBHC, the fact that we are we've really been the leaders in the system of care wraparound initiative in the state and in fact in the nation with our with our ESA program, all of those really lend themselves to our ability to compete for these kinds of grant funds.
And then on the personnel itself, you have a project director, it looks like 2 care coordinators, a systems analyst, and 3 peer support. And so are the peer support full-time?
Those are all full-time positions.
So it seems like it's a little bit, I mean, do you need a director for an 8-person program, or is it?
Personnel identified in the grant that we had to have identify a director for it.
But one of your 24 people are doing it now, would that, I mean, we're doing it with this, so we create another director for this little 8-person program?
It is called a project director, which is a grant title. So it simply means that that person would be assigned a leadership role on the grant, but it is not a director level position in terms of the county classification. It's a behavioral health specialist too. So this is not adding a supervisor or a manager or a director level position. It's just what the grant calls that person's leadership role.
Remind me again, the highest behavioral specialist is a 1 or a 3?
The highest behavioral health specialist is a 3, and they are typically supervisory.
Okay, so this would be a mid-level. So we're adding
It's a
3,
line staff
so
role.
they'll be working, providing care.
Yes.
So we basically are hiring 3 caregivers and then 3 support people,
We're
an analyst and a,
One support.
We're adding an analyst. That's the one support position. The other, so we're adding 7 direct service providing staff.
I see, yeah.
And then 1 data analyst.
So a project director is going to work as a care coordinator also, I guess, or
As a clinician.
as a clinician.
Leadership role.
Do are care coordinators clinicians?
Yes.
They're bachelor level ones.
Okay, so, I mean, I realize they're different, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 4 people and then 3 peer support. Okay, I see. So, all right. Well, I see the deadline for this is April 19th.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Will these staff, if successful, will the staff be housed at the Wall Street Services Building? And if so, is there currently room there for the staff, additional staff?
We do have some room. We have some empty cubicles, and we also will be placing some that'll be in the field mainly, so they can have a shared space for like documentation. But we do have we did a preliminary feel of how we can place people and give them each a workspace.
Okay, thank you.
So you're talking about the building over here, the building here, okay. So all of this would go into that.
Well, they'd be doing a lot of work in the field, but yes, I mean, they're
Yeah,
looking
I
for
get
home
that.
base. Mhm.
And I think in addition, we're really aware of a need to get these services into our hub sites and
Yeah.
into the community. So these are clinicians, typically the folks in Liz's programs are not office-based. They're in the community, they're in schools, they're in family homes, and hopefully meeting with clients as well at hub locations.
Yeah.
Would they actually then become kind of based out, I mean, somebody in Redmond and somebody in South County or whatever? I mean,
Well, I would love that,
Yeah.
but Liz and I haven't talked about
Yeah.
that yet.
I see.
That's the intention. When we say like their base hub, this is where they're going to get their technical support, their supervision, their training would be here, and have a place to get supplies, and then we place them for days at a time at the other locations when they have staff.
So are there sometimes when you give us applications, you kind of break it out with personnel costs and then other costs, like the next one I think we're going to have, or something we have today is shows travel and this and this and this. Are there other expenses? I mean, we can do in kind, but does this cover, I mean, I guess we've already got space, you said, but there's other expenses when we add people, like maybe cars, maybe,
We considered an additional vehicle because of the amount of travel.
yeah. So is that part of this grant? So you have a breakout then and beyond just 8, is there a reason that isn't attached to this, or, you know what I'm talking about? I think the next one.
Well, I think the full-scale budget is still in development, so that's the reason it's not attached to this. And we often don't have that at the point we need to bring this to the board, just to allow us time to actually pursue the application. But that's something we're working on now.
I think when we tentatively mapped it out, there wasn't any additional costs that were covered by the grant as we
Yeah.
figured it was.
$1.3 million a year would cover more than 8
Yep.
people. $2 million the last year would cover a lot more than 8 people.
There was some allotted for some required trainings they would have, and so, we did that, and the vehicle and the expenses that we have just for running the program.
Yeah.
Factored in, but it wouldn't be anything additional that was not covered under the grant.
Any further comments or questions? Commissioner Dare, any further comments or questions?
No, it just would be good to see your actual budget when you get to that point. I think that's important.
Well,
That should have been
Is that
attached.
something you're working on now, or?
I mean, even a pro forma budget could have been attached.
So that's something we will do going forward. That hasn't been the request historically. So I'm hearing that that's something you'd like to see sooner in the process. And we'll get that to you as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I think what I'd like to do is see that if you have something, maybe, I mean, we don't have to approve this today. So I guess my vote would be to look at that, because
We
this is a
can't
big request.
proceed.
And- What's that?
I'm sorry, Commissioner. We can't proceed with the work entailed for this application without permission to apply. So if.
You've already done, well, I'm sorry, but you've already done work without,
No,
you can-
we've not. We've not started.
you've done this work. I mean, if you've,
We've just filled out the preliminary request. We typically, in our internal process, we're asked not.
well, I'm in favor of proceeding generally, but I'm not, I'd like to see where it's going. I mean, it's a big, as we talked about in some of the other programs, when we add a big group that's dependent on a federal grant, and then it's going to, I just want to kind of see how it fits into the existing program. So that's my desire to see that. I see the application deadline's the 19th, so that's almost a month.
Clerk, if I may intervene. George Conway, Health Services Director. This scale grant is a major undertaking to
Right.
write. The structure is very demanding. SAMHSA has a set pattern where they need a lot of content. I think that we could provide a pro forma budget post haste, but we really need to, and most of the elements that are described here, the personnel, which is the primary expenditure, but we can provide that, but beyond that, we really need to know whether or not we can go forward with this before asking staff to spend many, many hours preparing a rigorous.
So, and I'm seeing that situation. So if they came in and sat down and said, the three of us spent 2 weeks running all these numbers and thinking about how great this is going to be, then the response from the board could be, why did you spend 2 weeks on this? We didn't approve it. So I'm just acknowledging, I can see the situation that we're in here.
So we do have
Yeah.
a
Very
preliminary draft budget. We just have not historically been asked to attach that level of detail until we've worked through the full process of planning a grant, because often those numbers change as you're developing. We can provide that to you today as a first look. The caveat I would have is just that those do change as we continue to work through all the steps of development. So I just would hate for you to be attached to one version and it changes, and so that's the reason that it's not
We did do
there.
that to
Yeah, if you could get that to us, we've got some time. I don't think we're saying we're not going to pursue this, but we'd like to see it. And just for the record, we've got another issue that's actually on the agenda later today, where I went back and looked at the original grant application from last May, and it has what I'm asking for. So I just, we get these applications, and the big ones have ramifications, and we've been, there's other issues here about just, kind of documenting where we're going. Like I said, if you're adding 8 people, 3 of whom are peer supports, I know roughly what most of your employees cost. That isn't 1.3 million.
Right.
So there's other things we're buying, doing, and it sounds like we're not renting more space, although other programs we've had to rent significant amounts of space. And so I just want to see this kind of a thing, and and I'm sorry if it's an inconvenience, but I think we're not going to complain if you spend 2 days working on it and come back and say this is more detail, because it is a big program, and it's a 4-year program. And something we've all, I think, I'm supportive of what you're trying to do, and I'm supportive of the program, but I just think that's our responsibility.
So, sir, as we have a follow-up meeting this afternoon, as you mentioned, can we bring the budget with us and share that then?
Sure, if it's done, yeah, whenever you can bring it tomorrow. We're not going to have another meeting until Monday, so.
I notice on, it does say at the end of our description that the purchase of 2 vehicles, but is that like for the state? They could buy 2 vehicles if they would have applied, and you can buy 1 vehicle? Because that is included back here on the analysis.
If 2 vehicles is included, the plan is to purchase 2 vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know which one this is for. So the pro forma is really a good idea, I think.
It's a large amount, and I think we still have to work through all of the indirects and the match funds. So those are more tedious, detailed budget conversations that we still need to have. But we do have a preliminary budget that outlines very basic things like training dollars, vehicles, supplies, travel, mileage, benefits, et cetera, that we can share today.
Great.
Yeah.
If you could just give us, that sounds great, and thank you for that. So,
If I may, the last time I was in front of the commission, I did not bring in a flyers of their program. I remember you all had to share, so I did bring them for you this time, and I'll just leave them there if you wanted to see. This is essentially the system of care that this would.
Yeah, you can just bring them up. We'll take them. Thank you for bringing them. We're anxious to see them. So,
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
thank you.
Janice?
So the next item on the agenda is consideration request for a different SAMHSA Strategic Prevention Framework Partnership for Success grant application.
Good morning.
Yeah, maybe you can introduce everybody too, so thank you.
I'm Jessica Jacks. I supervise our prevention team at Deschutes County Health Services, and I'm joined by...
Good morning. I'm Julie Spackman, and I am the team lead for our substance abuse prevention team under Health Services.
And I'm Jim Bowen. I work for Ben the Pine Schools, and I'm Executive Director of South County and Middle School Programs.
Oh.
We also have a grant request for you today, similar to the last one we heard with a few caveats of differences. This is a SAMHSA grant titled Partnerships for Success. Strategic Prevention Framework Partnerships for Success. It is a 5-year grant opportunity to focus on underage drinking, and it allows for applicants to select other substances to focus on as well. This particular grant allows for $300,000, up to $300,000 per year for each of the 5 years. It does also require a couple of key positions, one of which you heard before is titled Project Director, but is not necessarily a director level position as we would describe in our county classification system, but rather a nomenclature that the grant requires. That project director would be Julie Spackman. We're proposing that she would lead that particular role at 0.1 of her FTE. We would also request, let me back up. So that project director position is required for this grant, as well as a lead epidemiologist. And that lead epidemiologist, we're proposing we would contract this position. We do have one FTE that we would hire at a limited duration for the scope of the grant, and a 0.08 FTE is itemized for the supervisor's time, my time.
So just
Sure.
so you have 0.1 for a project director, a contract person being a lead epidemiologist. You have a 1.0 new hire.
Correct.
And 0.8 of your time is to this. Okay. And okay.
So our proposal is focused on expanding a pilot project that we've started in partnership with Ben Lapine Schools. It's called the Alternatives to Suspension Program, and we've had some communication with you, Commissioner Adair, about that
Right.
pilot project. Julie's going to expand a little bit in more detail about what this particular grant proposal would be requesting us to expand.
Thank you. So the opportunity that we have for this particular funding stream is to take what we've started with this pilot project that really focuses on a protocol change with the school district to allow all students, regardless of ability to pay, to be able to go through a screening process and then get routed to the appropriate level of services, depending on where they fall in relation to their substance use behavior. To ensure that not only that component is able to be sustainable after the grant is completed, but also that we would attach some additional strategies so that we have a comprehensive approach. We want to make sure that the system for allowing students to get this screening is something that can be sustained over time. So we would be partnering with some other agencies that already do services to refer for billing of insurance, either to the Oregon Health Plan or other private insurance, to make sure that the certified alcohol and drug counseling services could be paid for under insurance. And then also, this grant would allow us to plan for the sustainability of the low and medium risk student population, to be able to have an evidence-based curriculum that would be designed to curtail their use behavior so that they would not progress into substance use disorder. So that's a component that would be particularly connected to the referral process once a student violates the school policy for drug and alcohol. And then looking at the needs of the rest of the population within the school, that's a small population of students that are violating the policy. So we want to also make sure that the rest of the student population has prevention strategies connected to this to try and reduce just the number of students that are violating the policy in the first place, and also provide support to parents. So in this proposal, there's finance to assist with some prevention campaigns, and also direct parent workshops designed to help parents talk to their students about abstaining from drug and alcohol use and having a productive skill-based conversation about that. So it really takes a comprehensive approach rather than just only looking at the protocol change within the district, coming around all of the aspects of things that are influencing student behavior.
Julie, I have a question. The numbers that are on the backside of our proposal, the percentage who drank or who used marijuana, where are those statistics coming from? Are those Deschutes County?
So I believe that that data is it on, it's on this one? Okay. I think those ones are probably from the Student Wellness Survey.
From Deschutes County?
From Deschutes County as a whole.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
it's really high then, when you think that 10% of the 8th graders have been using marijuana. I mean, 1 out of 10, and currently, and then what is it? 25% of the 11th graders, a quarter of them. Yeah, okay, all right. I just was wondering.
Kind of a follow-up that, I think it was last year, we had a presentation of these numbers, I think. Is that the survey I remember this presentation on 8th graders and 11th graders. Is that these numbers? Or have they been updated since? We had a upstairs presentation on this, I remember.
There's 2 different school surveys that take place. That's proposed to change, but currently the Oregon Healthy Teen Survey is delivered in the odd years, and the Oregon and the Oregon Student Wellness Survey is offered in the even years. And so, not being familiar exactly with the data that you looked at, it could be from one or the other of those surveys, but generally we report data at the county level for student behavior around substance use.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Did you have any comments on that survey information?
Dr. Conway reminded me that these are self-reports, and they're really strong, validated survey data collection tools. But as self-reports, they're often underreported, so we could expect that our data to be higher. And we also know historically, unfortunately, Deschutes County adolescent rates of alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use are historically higher than the state, and the state of Oregon tends to have a higher rate of alcohol use in particular than the rest of the nation. So it is something to pay attention to, and it's.
Yeah. You have any other questions?
No, that's what I remembered.
Yeah.
We lead the state.
So, did you want to say something? Or?
Well, I'm excited about the possibility. Currently at the school district, we have a varying sliding kind of scale of out-of-school suspension for kids who are caught either under the influence or in possession of illegal drugs or alcohol at school. And right now, if a family chooses to see an outside drug and alcohol counselor on their own and pay for that, the number of days out of school is fewer than if they don't. And we have kids that select families that select both. And so what this would allow is access to those services for all students, and it wouldn't limit it just to those that can afford it or choose to afford it. So
So a couple of follow-up questions. So do we already have this program, and what's the number of staff we currently have doing this?
So it's being pilot tested right now, and that's this health services staff is a grant-funded position. That grant sunsets in 2020. And this particular project would move to the new staff to manage under this new grant. And that would free up the remainder of the current Drug-Free Communities grant staff to focus on other projects, because we can't supplant and we don't intend to do that. So it would be a baton pass from one grant staff to another to take it to full scale.
Even if you get this grant, I mean, our fiscal year starts in July, so you wouldn't use it in the first half of this fiscal year? Or
Yeah, the funding for this particular grant wouldn't start until September, early October. And so the pilot project that's currently underway started in January of 2019. Yeah, and will finish in December of 2019. And so this particular proposal would say we're going to look at the data that comes out of that pilot project and then move forward with an expansion, knowing that so far it looks good, and we want to take advantage of an opportunity to put more resources.
So this is the county doing this. What other, or do you work in partnership with other programs that are working with particularly middle school and high school youth?
Is that a question to Jim or myself?
Whoever knows the answer.
Yeah.
Both is yes.
Yeah, and the current pilot will look a little different, my understanding, than what this grant would provide if we got the grant. But currently, we're using services from the county, from the school district, and OSU Cascade interns to provide some of the classes, the educational classes that we're doing with kids who are caught currently under this program with the pilot. And we're piloting it at 3 schools, 2 in La Pine and 1 here in Bend. And so we just started that, as Julie said, here.
It isn't throughout the
January.
district, or?
No.
It seems like this is, because I remember we saw that survey of how much use there is of alcohol, marijuana, and et cetera. And so we're just starting. I mean, I think it's a huge problem in the high schools. I don't know about that.
And we wouldn't disagree with that. It was more about the timing. We started the conversation and really started in December. And by that time, a lot of schools had already allocated their funds that they would put towards something like this because they received them in July. They were already allocated, and to start something mid-year, they didn't have the funds for the school cost to this pilot. And
So a couple of budgets. So attached to this is a budget similar to what we're asking about for the other grant we just heard. And this, so the first item is personnel. And what's the growth of personnel from, 85 to 112 in 5 years, and benefits? Well, benefits follow salary. Is that an additional person, or is that just the expected increase of the?
That's the expected increase.
From 85 to 112 in 5 years. Is that 1 FTE, or is that 1.1?
That's the 1.18.
Okay, and then the contractual of 92, and then it goes down. Is that I didn't catch who that was, or are you? Is it,
In the first year,
Yeah.
one of the major larger contracts that we'll have is with the lead epidemiologist. We're anticipating a lot of infrastructure needing to be developed during that year, some additional assessment, and then once that's built, we don't anticipate having that same need in the subsequent years.
And okay, so so what we do contractual work with an epidemiologist that's a privately, is a private party.
Correct.
And so part of that's for their time, and then parts for other infrastructure is, what is that in the epidemiology world? What's infrastructure?
Actually, this particular grant separates, it's really convoluted. This table that you're seeing is really a compilation of the requirement of the data collection, which is the lead epidemiologist, which is capped at 20% of the total grant budget. Infrastructure is capped at 15%, and then there's the non-capped portion. So it's a combination of all those.
So, direct answer to your question, though, the role of an epidemiologist in this sort of enterprise is to develop any questionnaires, instruments, data framing, and the analytic scheme necessary to provide insight from the data that's gathered.
Okay, good. Well, I'm supportive of the grant application, so how about yourself?
I am also.
Yes.
Any other comments?
What about vaping? What are you doing? Is that going to be anywhere included?
So the focus of the grant itself, the funding announcement, specifies that we have to prioritize alcohol. The other two substances that we're adding, because we have the ability to do that, is tobacco and marijuana, which would cover the substances that are most typically vaped.
Right, okay, good.
So just as a kind of heads up as you go forward, we have our budget committee meetings coming up, and we're getting funds now from the marijuana taxes, and it's $300,000-400,000. This to me is exactly what I would like to see marijuana tax revenues that come into us go to with health issues with children. So I'm just one commissioner. I don't know if the other commissioners want to talk about it now, but maybe instead of 3 schools, we do more schools. We've got lots of them. And so I mean, in our public health role, to me, this is a very important one. I don't know, any thoughts on that, commissioners?
Well,
Since we're,
and my thoughts
got 'em all
are,
here.
this is government we're talking about, so we want to, and the big picture goal is empowering the kids to make good choices, empowering families, so that the culture isn't just to let the, kids find these things out by themselves, and then also advocating for the, the family unit and the sense of community for the whole area. So, just writing a check and saying, let's go fix the problem is always a small part of the solution.
No, I thought the program was an excellent idea, that actually you take someone who's broken the rule and you actually educate them. And, referring to Clear Alliance, that's always educating. And I know the Redmond schools, and actually in 36 counties in the state, our youth are really misinformed on what's really happening. So thank you for bringing this.
Yeah, and we've said at other meetings, I don't know about the alcohol use, but the marijuana use, what we get a lot from different health professionals and things is the risk to young minds and young people in terms of it's different than it was when people, our age started. It was, somebody was telling me about the other day, the difference in the THC, and we've heard a lot about that over the last 2 or 3 years. So good. So I'll entertain a motion to support this request.
I'll move approval of the Strategic Prevention Framework Partnership for Success grant application.
I second the motion.
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. Thanks for coming in and explaining it to us.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah. Okay, so the next, the next item on our agenda is a public hearing on appeal of administrative determination site plan review for marijuana production and processing at 25450 Walker Road. If you're, we'll have some information from staff here, but if you want to testify on that and haven't signed a blue sheet, they're over here on the table. If you're the applicant, you don't have to sign up. The applicant doesn't, and if you're the appellant, you don't have to sign up, but anybody that's a citizen that just wants to be heard, you fill out that form and give it to Sharon. Thank you. All right. Good morning, Jacob.
Good morning.
Take it away.
So there should be some opening statements in that.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm getting myself. Okay. This is the time and place set for hearing on file 247-19-000-178-A, an appeal of files 247-18-000-504-AD and 505-AD and 506-SP. and staff will outline the hearing procedures that will be followed.
Mr. Chair, just a point of order. It looks like we had a meeting addition request for the Health Department for adjusting resolutions. And I was just acknowledging, it looked like staff was kind of not sure if to stay or not, which would be that bad situation if we ended up with a multiple-hour hearing.
I'd asked our administrator to contact them and let them know we'll take it up after the hearing, so, because there's two
So, yeah,
matters
so,
to discuss. So I don't know if that was done, so,
okay.
yeah, so.
I hadn't been informed.
This was
of them.
Well, it was a request yesterday, so it didn't get to the main.
Oh, and I'm just
agenda.
acknowledging who should sit in the room for the next hour or be called back in an hour. That's all I was referring to.
Great. Thank you.
Sounds like they'll be called back.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so we'll carry on. The hearing body, the Board of County Commissioners in this case, will take testimony and receive written evidence concerning an appeal of an administrative determination. The address of the property is 25450 Walker Road. The applicant, Mark Weisheit, is requesting approval of 2 administrative determinations and site plan review to allow a marijuana production and processing facility. All testimony should be directed to the hearings body, again, the Board of County Commissioners in this case. At the conclusion of the hearing, the board will deliberate towards a decision or continue the hearing to a date and time certain. The hearing will proceed as follows. Staff will provide a brief report. The applicant will present their testimony and evidence. The appellant will present their testimony and evidence. Opponents, proponents, and any other interested persons will present their testimony and evidence. The applicant, as the party bearing the burden of proof, will then be afforded an opportunity to present rebuttal testimony. If requested by the board, staff will provide closing comments, and a full written version of the hearing procedures is available at the table by the side of the room. Commissioners must disclose any ex parte contacts, prior hearing observation, biases, or conflicts of interest.
Does any commissioner have anything to disclose, and if so, please state the nature of the same and whether you can proceed. Mr. Bone?
So thinking back, I think when this application went in, some people had notified, oh my goodness, look at the location of this. And when I was out in Alfalfa last year, I just made sure to drive by to understand the roads and the lay of the land. I do know the appellant just from the history, but yeah, no biases or conflicts.
I do know the appellant, and I don't believe I have any biases.
So, and I have no specific knowledge of this application other than the packet that we reviewed, and we've got the notebook here that contains all of the written record that we've had a chance to review, and we had a work session on it Monday to discuss basically what's the primary issues are and that sort of thing. So, does any party wish to challenge any commissioner based on ex parte contacts, biases, or conflicts? So, hearing no objections, the hearing is now open. Staff will proceed with a brief staff report.
Thank you. My name's Jacob Ripper. I'm a senior planner for Deschutes County. This is just a brief outline of the application, the appeal, and the location of the property. The applicant and appellant can further discuss their points during their allotted time for testimony. Speaking of testimony time limits, we do have some requested time limits today for testimony. So we ask that the applicant and appellant both limit their testimony and presentations to 30 minutes apiece. And then for all other individuals here, we'd ask that you limit your testimony to 3 minutes. You can submit written testimony as well. And we have a timer to help everyone stay on track, hopefully. So this is a proposal for marijuana production and processing. It's in the EFU, or exclusive farm use zone. The property is about 40 acres in size, and then the proposed building is 10,200 square feet with approximately 1,200 square feet reserved for the processing use. The location of the property, it's in the Alfalfa community. It's south of Alfalfa Market Road. It's the small square on the screen. I don't know if you can see that. It's a small red square. It's about 9 miles east of Bend. Zooming in on the property, this aerial image shows the outline of the property lines, and then it shows that there are some small to medium-sized farms in the surrounding area. Most of these properties are developed with a dwelling. And most properties range in size from about 20 to 70 acres in the area. Zoning in the area is predominantly also EFU. It's this tan overlay color. The red and yellow in the corner are MUA 10 and RR 10. Those are rural residential zones. And this is the revised site plan submitted by the applicant. It shows development concentrated in the central portion of the property, with access coming from the southeast from Walker Road.
When you say revised plan, what does that mean? Revised prior to the hearing or revised prior to the decision?
Revised prior to the decision. It included the access road, I think, was the primary revision to it.
Okay.
The appeal objections listed 6 main points, those being the ratio of crops produced on-site to the ratio of crops produced in the proposed building, the proximity to a possible youth activity center, carbon filtration as an odor control method, adequacy of the fire protection district, verification of the electrical utility, and site plan review criteria. This is a draft timeline for our decision. So today, the 20th, is the public hearing. Typically, hearings, if it's requested and granted, there's a open record period. So that's 1 week reserved for new materials and testimony, 1 week for rebuttal, and then a final week for a statement from the applicant. Typically, these are 21 days long, so that would end April 10th. We could schedule deliberations on April 24th with a draft decision being presented to the board around May 13th with a target final decision of May 22nd. Right now, the statutory time frame for a final decision is May 26th. That being said, during that 21-day open record period, if the applicant agrees to that period, the clock is extended for 21 days, so that would push us out into the middle of June about. That's all that I had for today. I'm available for questions now or throughout the hearing or at the end.
So one question I have is, remind me, the applicant, we have this map that shows the applicant. So the appellant property is to the, which one? The northeast? Northeast. Or southeast, I mean, yeah, southeast, yep, yeah. And then maybe if there's some witnesses, we've got maps here, and we always like to kind of know where you live relative to this. So maybe you can just tell us kind of roughly.
That's the Boundless Farm.
Yeah.
It's right there.
So.
And then this map here is the same map that the commissioners have too. So,
Yes.
so if you want to point to it during your testimony.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. Any questions of Jacob?
No questions.
Any questions? Okay. So this would be the time then for the applicant to make their presentation.
Hello. Thanks.
All right, good morning, commissioners. Everybody else, I'd like to pass it over to my mom to start our introductions.
Okay.
Do we have the presentation?
It's coming.
And so this is a copy of what we're going to see up here?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And just a point of order too, I noticed, Jacob, in your outline of how the hearing will proceed today, do I need to reserve 5 minutes or so for rebuttal out of my 30 minutes?
No.
Or, okay, great, just wanted to make sure.
We just didn't want to, oh, you're having trouble hearing in the back? Oh, so, yeah, with 3 of you sitting there, you may need want to pull the microphone to yourselves, or even if you want, you can sit over at the other table. Use that one if that, yeah, let us know in the back if you can't hear. We're not very good at making sure that happens. So, thank you. Yep, go ahead.
All right, can we go to the next one, please?
And so for the record, yeah, go ahead and introduce yourselves as you speak. Or
Good morning to all of you and to you as well. I'm Elizabeth Weisheit, the proud mother of Mark Weisheit. I was born and raised in New Zealand, and I ran into a handsome Australian who was on his way here and persuaded me to join him, and we came into this country, welcomed as residents, and later took up citizenship. And I'm very proud to have raised with him 3 Americans and now 3 grandchildren. Did I mention I'm a retired school teacher? Not yet retired from parenting and grandparenting. And as a parent and teacher, having heard what we all heard earlier, I think it's wonderful the way you're handling problems with our children today and going forward with that, because it's not just here, as we all know. It's in many places, in many countries, including New Zealand. Thank you. Mark.
Thanks, Mom. So I'm Mark Weissheit, and I currently live in Southern California, grew up in Philadelphia, which is where my parents settled as we were kids. And we're probably an unlikely duo to be starting a business like this. I have been in technology as a computer programmer most of my career, almost all of my career. My mom, as she mentioned, is a school teacher. My sister is a social worker, focusing on behavioral health, another sort of connection to an earlier session here. But my brother, John, who lives in Colorado, is in the cannabis industry and has been since it was legalized there, and has started and run a number of successful businesses that both of us have invested in over the years. And through that, we sort of become a little bit interested in it. And neither of us smoke weed, so it's kind of interesting that we are interested in getting into it. But I've been interested in moving to this area for a number of years. I have a 2.5-year-old son, and I don't want to raise him in Los Angeles. I'd like to raise him in a community more like the one here. And so when we met Jacob Onat, who's our business partner sitting back there, a couple of years ago, we saw this as a great opportunity to start a business in the area. Jacob is a little bit more familiar with cannabis than we are, and he has a philosophy that we thought was great. Very similar to what my brother has found success with, sort of taking a different approach to the large mass-produced operations that tend to be out there. He focuses on quality product, takes a lot of care in producing that product, whether it's the ingredients, the methods, and is focused also on educating people about it and the benefits of it, which was something that we really felt was in line with our values and our ethics. So we started a business venture with him, and we opened a dispensary in town about 6 months ago called The Local Market. And that's still growing. One thing that we're really proud of, which I think speaks to our approach and how it's a little bit different, is that we have 5.0 stars in our reviews online, which is pretty much unheard of. And it's really because we take care in our consumers. We educate them. Jacob scours the state for high-quality products that we sell at an affordable price.
Which dispensary is yours?
It's called The Local Market. It's on First Street in Bend. When we bought this property, we weren't sure necessarily that we wanted to get into production and processing. As I mentioned, I would like to move to the area. We thought perhaps this could be a place to build a house. Perhaps we would want to start to grow and process to both provide product to the store and across the state as well through distribution. And I think as we've seen the store sort of resonate with people in the area, we started to realize we think we're onto something here. We think our approach is unique, and we think that people appreciate it and value it, from recreational consumers to our medical patients who are finding relief from all sorts of ailments. And so we decided that we thought that this was an avenue we wanted to pursue. We submitted our application. And it was approved, which we felt sort of validated a lot of the due diligence that we did when we were considering this property. We wanted to make sure we followed the rules, and we did a lot of sort of thorough assessment of the property to make sure it met all of those rules before we even purchased it. And we think that was validated with the initial approval of this application. And I think I'm going to keep moving given our time limit. But I would like to add, because I think there was a suggestion that in the appeal that we might not follow the rules. The rules are extremely important to us. I have, as I mentioned, a 2-year-old son. His mother would probably kill me if we got into any trouble. I am not starting this business to risk anything. I'm investing, most of my life savings, as well as some of my mother's or my father's, savings. And this is a strictly regulated business, as you guys know. There is absolutely nothing we would tolerate in terms of breaking the rules, bending the rules. We are 100% committed to being, fully compliant with any and all regulations. So with that, next slide. I'll skip over this pretty quickly, too, because I think Jacob summarized most of these points. The one thing I will say is, from the beginning, it was important to us to not only follow the rules, but to be considerate of the community and our neighbors. We've reached out to as many neighbors as would respond to us to solicit their feedback on our early plans, to make changes to the plans along the way. We situated the building in the center of the property so that we ensured that we were as far away from them as possible to minimize noise and sort of accommodate, their sense of privacy and things like that. We situated so it doesn't sit on the current sort of farmable land. We've continued to farm orchard grass on the property, and we intend to do so, given that we think that fits in more consistently with the rural and pastoral sort of surroundings. As I said, I think it's important, and I think even the appellant, we've had a number of interactions with them, and we understand and appreciate their opposition to this. We understand it's not an industry that everybody supports or understands, and that's unfortunate. But we have made an effort to be amicable and to try and accommodate as many of their requests as possible throughout this process. And I think we both agreed coming into this, we're going to be good neighbors, whatever happens here, and that is very important to us. And so, next slide, please. So just to kind of summarize what you're going to hear from Stephanie and a little bit from me going forward, we feel that the original approval of our application was appropriate given the rules, and we feel like some new standards have been sort of raised through the appeal, which we don't think is fair. I mean, we think that we think this industry should be heavily regulated, and we think maybe even some of the rules should be changed in the future, given some of the opposition in the area. But we are here to play by the rules, and we've submitted an application that abides by those rules, and so we think we should be judged by those rules, and therefore we do think that the appeal should be denied and our application granted. But we certainly respectfully defer to you guys. That is, your decision here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioners, and thank you, Mark and Libby. I really appreciate your context here. Next slide, or actually, I'm going to skip over probably the next 5 slides, because we did a submission, a written letter with attachments, and I don't need to go through all the legal arguments. I really want to get to the standards. So the appeal topics, that's the next slide after that one, please, Amanda. There we go. These are the items that were raised by the appellant. Concerns about the minimum processing requirement, 25%. Concerns about proximity to what they're calling an alleged youth activity center.
Can you hold on one second? So what's the purpose of the other pages in here? What are we?
All right. Well,
I'm not saying you have to go through them. I'm just saying.
Sure.
The context legal context. I'm not sure.
Yeah. This is the exclusive farm use zone, and marijuana is a farm crop as established by the Oregon legislature. I've done some context here about the fact that it's a use allowed outright, not conditionally, when you're growing marijuana. And yes, it's subject to the standards in 18.116, but it is a use that's allowed outright. which is why it's an administrative determination. And then the site plan review procedures are for processing. And then I've just gone through the general legalities of it, the fact that it's legal under Oregon law, designated farm crop. Again, I'm happy to go through these, but I kind of figured that they.
No, I understand. I just wanted to know what they're
Yeah.
here, so somebody
Yes,
created them. I
yes.
just wanted to
Well,
understand what they're here for.
and Mark did such a nice job giving context, and I want to be really cognizant of the 30 minutes that we have here. So really, I was just in the middle of these appeal topics: odor, utility verification, fire protection, and site plan review information. So going to the next slide, please, Amanda. The 25% processing rule, that's a floor. And Mark, I'm going to actually shoot it back over to him to kind of go through. We're going to comply with that. First of all, it's a condition of approval, and if it's a condition of approval that's not complied with, they stand to lose the approval. They stand to have that permit revoked, and they also stand to have the OLCC license revoked, because they have to do pretty much the same thing for the OLCC as far as their drawings, and that's also set forth in my letter. I go through, there's pages and pages of OLCC regulations with which an applicant has to comply, which all these things that they have to turn in before OLCC will review and before OLCC will submit a license. So again, it's a floor. Mark will talk about the number of rooms that they have and the amount of the product that they're growing. And frankly, I'm not really sure what the appellant's objection is, other than there's a standard, and we've said we're going to meet it, and there's going to be a standard of approval. So
Mike,
go ahead.
We haven't done very many processing applications, so there's a couple new parts to that. The idea is that, I guess the appeal is that that you'd be getting it from other farms and you'd become a big processing center. Is that I mean, there's a floor, I guess. Is the floor for the OLCC the same? Do you have, or is there a floor processing centers?
The floor, so to speak, that the items you have to submit to the OLCC for approval includes a site plan drawing and how your layout is. If you're going to change that in the future, you have to let them know. I mean, you can't just,
No, but I'm just asking, is there any restrictions at the OLCC with processing, how much of it has to come from that farm? Or is that just specific to our code?
I can find that citation for you if there is and submit that to you.
I don't know if there is. I was just wondering if there is.
Right, well.
Or if this was just a Deschutes County rule.
I combed through those OLCC regulations pretty thoroughly just to give you all a flavor of what is required, but I can pinpoint what that requirement is for you if you'd like me to, the record's left open afterward.
Yeah, and I'll jump in on that. I know the answer to that. So yeah, I think what we're addressing here is the 25% processing. Oh. My name is Jacob Onat. I'm partners with Mark. I'm a commercial real estate owner in downtown. I'm also I recently got elected to be on the BCD Visionary Group, so I look forward to working with you guys on that as far as revitalizing that Bend Central District. So I think what we're addressing here is a 25% processing rule, which is strictly county related. So when you're applying for a production application with processing, 25% of what you grow has to be processed.
No, I know our rule. What about the OLCC?
OLCC does not require that.
Okay.
There's
That's all I was trying to ask. I'm just wondering if there was, okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, so I'll add maybe one or two things to build on Stephanie's points about the OLCC monitoring and enforcing these rules.
I mean, if you want to go that direction or if you want to just keep going with what you're doing, all I want to know is, does the OLCC regulate processing this way?
Got it.
I mean, it's up to you how you spend your time, but I wasn't trying to interrupt your role. I was just trying to ask us. So whatever you want to do.
Commissioner Henderson, my point was that when you have a site plan that says, here's where we're growing it, here's where we're processing it, whether there's a percentage established or not, that's all submitted to the OLCC for review and approval. So that was kind of the general context of what my comment was.
Yeah, but I think that the idea is that I didn't create these regulations, maybe Commissioner DeBone can comment on it, but was that there was a minimum floor that you have to grow on that site. I knew more about the fruit industry. So in the fruit industry where I grew up, there's packing houses, and they used to be out in the farmland, and most of them now are going to other places. So the processing is like a packing house of fruit. So I think the idea is there was some restriction that if we're going to have processing out in rural county, we want a 25% coming off that farm. And I think is that the goal that was originally set
So,
up?
yeah, we haven't done this like this.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
a little bit different than the other application. So I'm thinking I'll be able to kind of converse about this after the.
Well, but I mean, that's
But yeah,
all
I
I'm
don't know if you
asking,
need
and what I'm
25.
hearing from OLCC, you're saying they don't have regulations on processing. So that,
Yeah, I
I'm
think-
not asking for anything more than that, so.
I mean, the one thing I'd add, I mean, the way we're approaching this, we would not only like to process as much as possible out of what we grow, we would also like to process as much as possible from what we grow. That allows us to enforce strict quality standards. As it's stated here on the slide, processed product is the cleanest way to consume cannabis, and we think that that's important. We think that there are negative health factors with smoking it. So we believe in trying to process. We don't think the market is quite there yet, but we feel like with good quality products, we can sort of lead the market to more of consumption of processed products. So it's in our best, it's part of our strategy, and it's in our interest, not just to follow the rules, but to process as much as possible of our own product.
And to add to that, we're doing that with a solventless process, so water and ice only, as opposed to a lot of people using harsh chemicals and stuff like that. So when he's referring to in the future we plan to process as much as possible, it's again with the idea of in the future providing customers, educating them with quality, and really the only way to do that is with solventless techniques. So.
Right. We included information in the letter that states that a minimum of 25%, and the estimate is higher than that, will be processed on site. So we meet that standard. The next slide has to do with the Boundstead Farms as a youth activity center, and we had some discussion on youth activity center last week as well. And I appreciate that this is a new, kind of a new opportunity that the commissioners have had to try to figure out, what do they mean by youth activity center? And so we've had a chance to look at a couple of the recent decisions, one of which is the High Nectar decision, and the commission said, this is our legislative intent. This is what we mean. And what we mean are licensed facilities. And I'm looking for the exact quote here: permitted, licensed, and or certified facilities. And when you look at the definition of the word center, and you go on to the Boundless Farmstead site, they've put themselves out there as a farm, as, CSA. We're growing vegetables, we're doing all these great things. Children, it sounds like children have come to the farm for field trips. We're not debating that. But Boundless Farmstead isn't saying, hey, we'll arrange for your field trips. This is part of our business plan. This is part of who we are. And by analogy, children will go to, say, Congress for field trips. I don't know that we're going to say that the Capitol building constitutes a youth facility center. The fact that children may or may not be present does not define youth activity center, nor is it consistent with the High Desert Nectar decision that the commissioner said our legislative intent was to limit it to these types of facilities. So we're asking that using that definition that the commissioners have adopted, and then applying it to the facts as existing here, there's no youth activity center on Boundless Farmstead. Their website, it says where to find us, and then it refers to farmers markets and stuff, so their business is growing fruits and vegetables. I don't know what the crops are, and then putting those out to the community. And the fact that there are field trips do not make them a center. They haven't put themselves out there. They're not licensed as a facility by the state or by the county as a youth care facility or a youth facility or center or any of those terms. And I do want to keep moving along, so unless there's questions on that, I'd like to get into odor. Next slide, please. Thank you. The applicant submitted a 65-page cannabis noise and odor report by Colbright Engineering, one of the engineers there, who's a qualified expert in the field. I don't think that there's any question that he's unqualified to make his determinations. There's a thorough study of the odor control system and the testing that has been done on that, and the fact that it's been proven to mitigate odor impacts. Those are the requirements that the commissioners have asked with respect to odor mitigation. And my next bullet point, they go through the type of technology, materials used, case studies, volume calculations, a maintenance plan, examples of how other jurisdictions regulate odor control, and design descriptions of how odor will be effectively controlled in each room using inline filters and additional filters at all exhaust points. I may have Mark touch on this after I get through this slide. It's a dual filtration system. It's not just, hey, we're putting in a carbon filtration. And if the commissioners had any generalized concern about carbon filtration as effective, they had studies commissioned last year when the commissioners were studying new regulations, and the CDD report will support that as an effective odor control. Mark,
maybe what I'll add to that, I think we heard, speaking to some of the neighbors back in November, concerns about noise and odor. And when we probed on that, all of the locations that they mentioned where they noticed noise and odor were greenhouse operations, where you basically have a glass building and it's constantly venting and or air conditioning, as well as the fact that it's just one sheet of glass between the grow area and the outside. Because we're a fully indoor operation, we will be growing in individual rooms that are situated within the larger building. And those rooms will have the carbon filtration mechanism on them that then will vent out into the larger building, which then only vents to the exterior about 15 minutes a day. And there's an additional carbon filter on that secondary venting. So it's going through two sets of ventilation before it gets outside, and it's only venting 15 minutes a day. So there's really extra sort of protection from an odor perspective. And from a noise perspective, those fans that are venting are also running a very short amount of time each day. It was about 30 minutes total each day. Or 15, because it's the same, sorry. So 15 minutes a day that those fans are running. So I know noise hasn't been brought up here, but it was raised, I think, in some of the public comments on the initial application. So we're confident that those things shouldn't be an issue here. And then one other thing I'll add is these filtration systems recommend changing the filters every 12 to 18 months. We will, in the interest of just making triply sure that odor isn't an issue, we'll change those in advance. Jacob's practice is that he changes about every 6 months, so well within the sort of changeover recommendation there.
I thought you actually offered to do it every 3 months in something I read.
No, so the type of units that we're using that Colbright is actually analyzing require only 12 to 18 months.
I saw that, but I thought you said you were going to do it every 3 months.
Well, yeah, just to be extra safe. I mean, these are $150 filters, so I mean, in theory, we could replace them every couple of weeks if if there was an issue or whatever the case was. But like Mark was saying, we're pretty confident that every 6 months, I mean, we're going to be wasting filters, to be honest with you. But that's what we have to do to make the neighbors feel a little bit more comfortable. That's what we'll do.
So I do have a question, or did you have any other points on the odor? So I do have a quick question. So we've been doing this for a couple of years, and so we've heard basically about carbon filters, we've heard about ionization, we've heard about fogging. Do you have any comments, as all different systems that other applicants have said are the best?
Yeah,
we
looked at the ionization or the ozonator.
They're both the same.
Same thing. Yeah, we looked at the ozonator, but that kicks out ozone as a chemical into the air, and
because of the ionization.
The ionization is harmful gas. So keeping with our sort of overall philosophy about trying to do this differently so that it's better for our consumers, better for the environment. That was something we weren't willing to consider.
Yeah, you have a lot of applicants, like you said, they're trying to get their application passed. What we're doing is the best. Carbon filtration is proven to be the cleanest form. Ionization, ozone, releases ozone. So like, naturally you walk outside, you've got about 400 parts per million of ozone or CO2 in the air. These things remove odor, or no, they remove odor by releasing ions, and that kills the odor molecule on a molecular level, but in turn releases CO2, ozone, and is extremely bad. I mean, if you go in a room and you close yourself in the room, the practice is, harvest your room, put this ozonator in there, and don't come back for 48 hours, and then let it air out. So anyone who's told you, it's the most effective, yeah, it's probably the most effective, but it's probably not the healthiest thing to do, and it leaves, residuals on the wall and stuff. So carbon filters at this point in time is the cleanest and most effective way of removing odor.
And I think Stephanie mentioned this, there was a study by Deschutes County, as far as we understand it. You guys may be more familiar with this than we are, but that it confirmed the effectiveness of those types of filters. So
you mentioned, I'm just curious, your brother's in the business in Colorado. Do they use odor control?
That's a good question.
Yeah, they use carbon filters too.
Filters in.
My brother and Jacob, we sent my brother out here to sort of get to know Jacob when
we came from, his brother's from Colorado, I'm from Seattle. So the markets out there and the industry is a little bit different. They're a little bit more advanced just because they've been around a little bit longer. I think you guys have been doing this for 2 years now. So I think as time goes on and more applications get put through, having this discussion with us is going to spark some research on your guys' end. And, ozones are not good to use, so you'll remove that. But generally speaking, like in Washington, you can't use ozonators. The only form of odor control in Washington that they use is carbon filters. And same thing in Colorado. It's the healthiest thing.
It's interesting. You're first person in 2 years. You're the first person that said that. We've never been told that. So because we've heard about fogging, we've heard about ionization, and some people swear by each of those. So
some people say to spray the walls with bleach. I mean, there's a bunch of things you can do.
Do what? Bleach?
Yeah, some people spray the walls with bleach, but
similar philosophy about pest control and things like that. I mean, and mold control and things like that. My brother. He's partnered with a number of biological geoengineers. I don't even have the right words for it, but they're developing soils and pest controls that are organic and that are don't leave residual harmful products on the finished product. So one of the things that's been exciting for all of us, I think, is sort of my brother's not officially involved in this venture. He's kind of been consulting and helping, but, these guys have been doing a lot of research, and my brother's business is doing a lot of R&D in Colorado that we're going to benefit from to really try and, do this differently here.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, so moving on to the next couple of issues. Boundaries, the properties within the boundaries of the Alfalfa Fire Protection District. I don't think that that's in dispute, that fact, and that's all that the standard requires. It's within a fire protection district. There's no willing and able to serve requirement. However, the Alfalfa Fire District did confirm in a letter that's in the record that it has capacity to respond to and mitigate incidences. So just wanted to touch on that unless there's any questions in that regard. Utility verification is the next slide. And again, we've met the requirements, which is that we have a letter from CEC confirming that they're able and willing to serve the proposed use. The utility was advised of what that use is and confirmed that the electrical load can be provided. The fact that there is a system upgrade plan doesn't change their ability and willingness to serve the proposed use, and it is a standard part of their response. So unless there's any questions on utility verification, I'll go to...
I noticed that the amperage was like 2,400 amps. So it sounds like your business. That seems like a lot of amperage for 10,000 feet. Is that 200 is a typical house? And does the processing take a lot of amperage also? Or
no. So the processing actually takes probably less amperage than the house. Probably the majority of the power is going to be being pulled from the equipment, which would be like lights and air conditioners, and carbon filters, to be quite honest, because they take large fans to pull that air through to clean. I mean, we calculated it down to like the exact amp. I mean, off the top of my head, I could tell you, each light pulls 4.16 amps. Fans pull about 15. Remember, we have multiple in each room, so you multiply that. But yeah, it's mostly from the lights and the air conditioners.
And that's also at full capacity.
Yeah, that's also at full, yeah.
We're expecting maybe depending.
Initially, we'll probably use 450 to 600 amps.
Yeah,
but we want to have enough in place given the size of the facility. So just so you guys know, this is, a 10,000 square foot building with 7 rooms. We're only going to be utilizing probably 2 of those rooms for the first, year and a half. And that's just as we scale our business. But we want to have the power in place so we're, 2 years from now, we don't have to come and bother the neighbors again and dig a 100-foot trench and lay pipe and power. So when we are ready to scale, all we have to do is plug in our lights and, continue with whatever operating procedures we're following.
Great. I'm reading from the letter from the Central Electric. It said, okay, so a new 2,500 amp 3-phase 480 volt service associated with Cannabis Grow, and has determined that this service will require system upgrades to our facilities in the area.
Right, that's standard.
Yeah, so that's standard verbiage. If you look at any of the other applicants and their will serve letters, it has the exact same verbiage. And I've even called multiple times. We've been assigned different people we've been working with, but they mention, hey, we can't remove that verbiage. That's our verbiage, until you get assigned someone that we're working with and, we start that process, we have to say it might, it's going to require system upgrades. Yeah, so like I said, if you go to any other Deschutes dial and look at any other applicant, all of their will serve letters say the same thing. And that's just, to cover their own, interests.
Actually, some don't go into system upgrades. We've seen about, I don't know how many we've heard, 12 or 13. So some have just been more.
Or as of recently, the last year's applications. That's just something that they've been putting in. I mean, like I said, I've spoken with a few people there, and most likely we probably will have to, add some upgrades because there's not 2,500 amps there. There is already 3-phase though. So honestly, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the power upgrade process, but generally going from single phase to 3-phase is a huge deal. And prior to getting that will serve letter, we were under the impression we were single phase. 3-phase is already there, so all we're going to have to do is just put in some new wire and a bigger transformer. So a lot less of a hassle.
So time-wise, we've asked some questions. We're at 35 minutes now, so a few more minutes.
Really, I will just touch on this on the last item that was in the appeal, which had to do with site plan review. And to be honest, I wasn't clear as to what the appellant was alleging in this regard. So perhaps Ms. Dixon can address that in her presentation. It seemed to be that there was a question as to whether we might have a commercial use and that different standards applied for commercial use versus industrial use for site plan review. The site plan review standards are the same regardless of the proposed use, and there's no allegation that we failed to comply with any particular criterion in the site plan standards. So unless there's any questions on that, I suppose I can rebut any argument that's made during her presentation. The conclusion here is that substantial evidence shows that each of the criterion is met. That we don't need we don't need to go down the road of speculation on the amount to be processed or an undisclosed commercial use. The applicant has thoroughly testified as to his business plan and kind of how he came about this. We've talked about the 25% rule. The county's own studies show charcoal filtration systems are effective, and we also heard a lot from Mr. Onat here. And then with regard to Boundless Farmstead, it's not organized, licensed, or permitted as a youth activity center, which is what the commissioners have stated is the standard. So that's all for us, and unless there are any questions at this point, we'll just go ahead and save any further comments or responses for rebuttal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Questions? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Commissioners, I can note on the 25% requirement, that's mandated in ORS Chapter 215. So that's a land use mandate for processing of farm crops in a farm zone. That's an absolute. So that is outside of OLCC.
It's not, and we've just copied that as a county ordinance.
We have to, yeah. That's a black and white one. You can't. That's a not go below. So the 25% is mandated by state statute.
Thank you.
By the state.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I figured we have to get down to that a little bit because we just hadn't really discussed that.
Ms. Marshall, we appreciate the shorter PowerPoint this week. Last week were 2 very long PowerPoints.
When Jacob emailed about the presentation time limits, I thought, I feel guilty.
Yeah. Yep, thank you.
Good at things. 5 copies co-lived this time.
Oh.
Exhibits
Thank you.
numbered 3 for you guys, 1 for legal, 1 for staff.
Thank you. Hi. Oh, good.
Good morning. My name is Liz Dixon. I am an attorney with the law firm of Dixon Hatfield here in Bend. My practice is primarily land use and water law. I am here today representing Rowan Hollitz, who is sitting beside me. Mr. Hollitz is a resident of the Walker Road neighborhood, and as I referenced earlier briefly in the comments, Exhibit C in the packet that you have in front of you is a better tax map than the one I included with my appeal. It shows all the neighbors who have submitted objections, and it also shows where the Weisheit property is. If you look at Exhibit C, you will see that the Weisheit property is highlighted. It is approximately 40 acres, depending on how you calculate it. Southeast of that property, across Walker Road, is the Baron Hollitz property, and that is Mr. Hollitz's residence. Their property is on the corner of Dodds and Walker, and it just so happens that their address is Dodds, but they're kitty corner from the subject property. So as people, as opponents speak today, you'll be able to look at the map and hopefully figure out where they are in relationship to the application. Okay. The proposed use that you have before you is the marijuana production and processing facility, and as you have noted, that's a little different from what we've been dealing with going through this process. I'm going to call it farm and factory because it's a lot easier to say. They have 10,200 square feet of building they're proposing. That's the equivalent of about 5 single-family homes, and 1,199 square feet for the factory portion of the marijuana production on approximately 40 acres. The 6 issues that I am going to discuss with you here are the objections that I have to the application. Each one individually, separately, is a reason to deny this application. It's not a cumulative thing. If you find that any one of these is sufficient grounds to deny the application, it must be denied. There's a 7th issue that I'm going to raise today, and I'm going to raise it last, and that's the issue of the applicant's credibility. And I alluded to that in my introduction in the appeal. We've since had a number of occurrences related to it that will allow me to develop it further. It's critical that you consider the credibility of the applicant and their associates because it matters. What's being told to you is not able to be tested as it is in a court of law. We don't swear people in. We don't make them testify under oath. People can say all sorts of things to you that may or may not be true, and it's critical that you are comfortable with the credibility of the people who testify before you and that you believe them, because there's really no other way to test it. Let's start with the first argument that I have with regard to this application, and that is that the application does not satisfy the relevant criteria because it doesn't meet the processing requirements. Deschutes County Code 1816-025 talks about the facility for processing of farm crops must use at least 1/4 of the farm crops processed at the facility. There is nothing in the application that says they will do this. They are giving you assurances in final submittals that they will, but what we want to see is, all right, what percentage of crops do you suppose you will be able to produce in 10,200 square feet? And how much material will that make? And how do you intend to process it? And where is the material coming from other locations? And how much will you bring in? And how many trucks will that take? And where will the loading bays go? And where will you store that material? None of that detail is included here. When you have a processing facility, it is like a cannery. It's a facility that's going to take raw goods and turn them into something. And as we've heard here today, they're not even advocating for smoking it. So they're going to be turning it into something considerably different from its original nature, without details of how much is going to be involved, where it's going to come from, how it's going to be done, and what kinds of facilities are necessary to make that happen. Why is this important? The justification for the allowance of industrial activity on farmland goes way back, as Attorney Doyle noted. It's in state statute. And the reason it's there is because historically in Oregon, people processed as much as they could on their property. It made them more money. And so this honors the historical use of farming by allowing processing on site. But what it also does is it protects neighbors from impacts of trucking in and out of huge amounts of product, the noise, the odors, the unsightly processing impacts that come along with it. And that's why that 25% rule is here. In this case, we know for a fact that the applicant runs a dispensary in town. We know that they have other sources of material and that they have other places where they get their product. We don't know how much they're going to bring in or how far they're going to bring it in or what that's going to look like in terms of impacts in the neighborhood. That 25% number is important. The planner conditionally approved the application below, basically saying the rule says 25%, therefore we're going to condition you to say you will do 25%. If that's what we're going to do and we're just going to dictate that you will fulfill the standards, why have standards at all? Why make them go through a proof process? Why not just issue an edict that says everybody will use 25% and assume compliance? This code is there for a reason. It's there so that you can actually look at where the materials come from, how they're being processed, how they're being handled. It's not intended that it just get rubber stamped. And I ask that you look at this much more carefully, and if you're going to approve this application, you require the applicant to give you a lot more information about the processing that is being proposed on site. My second argument is that the Wise Height marijuana farm and factory is incompatible with the existing use. The rule, and I'm not going to read the site because I think it's 8 items long, but it's number 7 regarding separation distances, and it said shall be located a minimum of 1,000 feet from a youth activity center. If you go back to the map, which is Exhibit C, if you look at the Wise Height property and you look immediately to the west of it, you will see a 20-acre parcel noted as belonging to Kellner Dash Road. That's the facility. That's where the youth activity facility is located. It's right next door to the subject property.
Ms. Dixon, do you know if the owner of that property plans to testify today?
I don't believe they do. They have other commitments.
I think they have written letters in the...
There are, and there's another one as well that I will speak to in detail now. Applicant Wisehead has claimed there are no youth activity centers within 100 feet. That's understandable. That claim was initially made on June 20th of 2018, before this board had gone through the process of fleshing out what they mean by a youth activity center. The staff decision was mailed on February 5th of 2019. That's also before you fleshed out exactly what you meant, because the waive-seer decision, the decision that specifies what you mean by a youth activity center, was mailed on February 22nd, after both the application was filed and the staff decision on this application was mailed. So we have new law interpreting what makes a youth activity center that is contextual. Exhibit D in the exhibit packet you have before you is the waive-seer decision. It is binding precedent. Let's talk about the context of what waive-seer said. Page 5 of the decision cites to substantial evidence in the record for 2 referenced properties within 1,000 feet of the subject property in the waive-seer application. And here's what they found. Youth-oriented equestrian activities, children ages 5 to 18, 50 to 70 kids coming to the adjoining property, coming on a weekly basis, activities open to the general public, 4-H programs, homeschooling curriculum, 4-H clubs, meeting and practices, and held in both the residence, the outdoor building, and the outdoor facility pen. In your waive-seer decision, you summarized this as, quote, a place where activities center around youth on a regular basis. That's the easy terminology. So it's a place where activities center around youth on a regular basis. Now, let's look at the waive-seer decision and see if we know that that's clearly over the line and say that's a youth activity center. Let's see if this is also over the line. There are, in your exhibit packet, Exhibit E has 3 letters evidencing youth activity centers. And I will summarize for you what those 3 letters say. The Hennigan letter, dated 7/3/18, talks about a farm next door that hosts numerous children's field trips through Locavore's Farm Kids program that educates youth on farming practices. The Boundless Farmstead letter, submitted 7/6/18, talks about workshops, field trips, intern programs. And in 2008, they hosted 250 kindergarten through second graders, students through the Locavore program and environmental center tours. Abby and Andre Kellner Road on 7/19/18 submitted a letter that talked about a farm kids program, school groups at farm, extensive photos in the exhibit, partnership with the Bend Lapine School District and Central Oregon Locavore. We also know that COCC is involved in this program, as is OSU Cascades, and that we're talking about K through 3 students, 5th graders in some case, 15 field trips in 2018, 700 kids, preschoolers, homeschoolers, and a link in the material provided if you want to go look at it. So now we've looked at the facts in this case for what we're claiming is a youth activity center, depending upon your interpretation. How do those facts compare to the facts in Waveseer? Well, they both have youth-oriented activities. Waveseer is equestrian, this is farming. They both have children. Waveseer has children ages 5 to 18. This has preschoolers to age 10. The number of kids was listed in Waveseer as 50 to 70 a week. This talks about over 700. Both involve the general public, both involve organized programs, and both held meetings both in buildings and outdoors.
I have a question. I'm a little bit confused. Why does one say 700 and the other says 250? Are these those different properties, or?
I think they're different periods of time or different types of programs.
Okay.
In summary, the Youth Activity Center that is directly west of the subject property violates your existing uses criterion and should allow this property to not be allowed to be used for a marijuana farm and factory. The application should be denied. My third argument regards the odor control requirement. And this is another one where I feel like we're chasing a moving target. The rule is this: the building shall be equipped with an effective odor control system which must, at all times, prevent unreasonable interference. Not most of the time, not 50% of the time, not when somebody's looking, at all times. This is a very high standard, and I can understand why applicants are wrestling with it. But you wrote it for a reason. Why is this standard important? Marijuana is highly odorous. It's a difficult plant to grow. It's also very odorous to process it. Both are proposed here. This is farm and factory. The manner of grow and processing cannot disrupt the quality of lives of the neighbors according to this standard. Marijuana skunk odor is reported to enter homes through open windows, and in doing so, here's what it does. It permeates fabrics. It gets in drapes, linens, upholstery, rugs, so that even when the window's shut, the whole house smells like skunk. It also causes allergic and asthmatic reactions in some sensitive people, meaning it causes a health hazard. So the odor control requirement that you put in place is not something that's intended to be lighthearted. It's serious, and it's for a reason. The applicant proposes an activated carbon filtration method. It does not meet the stringent standard of must at all times because of the nature of carbon filtration. As you heard from the applicant, or from Mr. Onat, the applicant's associate this morning, they said it's 12 months, it's 18 months, it's 6 months, it's 3 months, we'll do whatever you want. They don't even live on the property. We don't know if there's even going to be someone there 24/7. And if they are going to be there, are they going to be outside or are they going to be inside? The carbon filtration system does not have a little red light on it. It doesn't have an alarm. You can't put litmus paper to it and find out when it's about to get full. And what we've learned about carbon activation is that it saturates at very different levels depending on what's going on. If there's a forest fire outside and there's smoke in the area, that can have a significant effect on how quickly the carbon filtration is saturated. If it's a humid day or if we have a thunderstorm, that affects how quickly it's saturated. And so there's no way of knowing accurately when that odor is going to escape until it escapes. Therefore, if the only way for carbon activation filtration to work is for people to find that it's now failed and must be replaced, it does not meet your standard, which says must at all times prevent unreasonable interference. The marijuana engineer, Roger Whitaker, in the Wave Seer application, thought ionization was better, and I disagreed with him. And you didn't reach the argument, so it was just sort of left for another day. But the comments that he made about carbon filtration were very serious, and I've included them as Exhibit B in my appeal document. I have not included it in the document of exhibits you have here. It's critical that you read Mr. Whitaker's comments and understand why he thinks activated carbon filtration, is not an adequate method. He's right, but neither is ionization. The method proposed by the applicant does not meet your standards, claiming they must at all times protect the neighbors from that odor, and that is reason for denying this application. My next argument regards fire protection standards for processing and that they are not met. Here I'm talking not about the literal line of your standard, I'm talking about the intent and the meaning of your standard. The rule says processing of cannabinoid extracts shall only be permitted on properties located within the boundaries of or under contract with a fire protection district, which is a good minimum. It's a good place to start. But why is that important? It's important because marijuana processing is dangerous. It's very dangerous. It can be very volatile. There are oils involved. We show here that there was one explosion about 2 years ago that Charlie Ringo owned and was working with, and it was a huge, ugly fire. That's what happens in processing, and that's why you have this additional fire processing standard for this kind of application. When you're running a factory, it's got to be safe. Why does that matter to the neighbors? Because farmland is very flammable. Fires travel fast. There are few breaks out there. They have dry wood fences, dry wood barns, hay and alfalfa stacked and growing in the fields that is highly flammable. There are defenseless animals that are fenced in and can't get out. The value of the farming businesses in this area are in their livestock and their crops, and a fire like the one we're talking about here can easily destroy everything, not just on the subject property, but if you look at Exhibit C, all the properties around it. This is the reason for the rule. The applicant proposes to farm and process in one building. They give us no details. They don't show structural breaks within it. They don't show fire code compliance. And most importantly, they don't show anything about a water supply that will be sufficient, that will hold the amount of water that the Alfalfa Fire District would need, with a valve to attach to their necessary hose in order to make it usable on the subject property fire. Is the Alfalfa Fire District ready? They've never dealt with one of these. They said in their letter that they have no special training or equipment or protection or gear for this kind of a factory fire. See Fire Chief Ron Thompson's letter. I've cited to it in my appeal on page 5, and it's in your record as well. Rowan Hollitz is going to speak on his 5 years with the Alfalfa Fire District Board. He knows intimately what they do and don't know, what they do and don't have. They're not ready. The applicant has not met the intent of this standard, though they may have met the letter. My fifth objection regards power supply feasibility and utility verification. And the board's comments, I think, got closer to my concern than anything I have said in my appeal process. Here's what the standard says. A statement from each utility company proposed to serve the operation, stating that each such company is able and willing to serve the operation, shall be provided. What the applicant said here in this hearing was it was just a form letter. They put the same thing in every form letter. They didn't craft this letter to our application. It's just a form letter. They put things in there because they had to. We asked them to take it out. They refused. They said they have to keep the form letter intact. What you have in front of you by applicant's own admission is not a letter from CEC that says it's willing and able to serve this operation, and that's what your standard requires. Furthermore, CEC says it will require system upgrades, and Commissioner Henderson is correct when he says they don't put that in every letter. They put it in letters where they know the system is inadequate to serve at the present time, and that is critical here. The CEC letter you have in front of you is not adequate. It can't serve the use they propose to put before you right now, and therefore the utility verification requirement's not met. Number 6, site plan review standards. And yes, I'm happy to give detail. If you take a look at DCC 18124, which we don't look at very often in the marijuana context, but it is important when you have a factory. Take a look at 18124.060 approval criteria. It talks about the importance of things like relating harmoniously to the natural environment and the existing development. That is not the case here. Landscaping and existing environmental conditions preserved. Not the case here. Designed to provide a safe environment. Not the case here. Why is this important? It's important because they're going to be doing an industrial service on farm land, and that's why site plan review is required. They're supposed to do a lot more than just grow plants in this property. They're going to be heating and treating with agents and concentrating and changing for retail consumption, but they don't give us detail. They're going to be packaging. They're going to be trucking in possibly as much as 3/4 more supply than is grown in their 10,000 square foot facility. And then they're going to process that, and then they're going to truck it back out. The site has to be safe. It has to be suitable for the use, and they haven't proven it. Because if they haven't given you details on processing, how can they give you details on the impacts of that processing? And if they haven't given you details on impacts of the processing, they have not met 18124.060 site plan review. Relating harmoniously to the natural environment and existing development. Landscaping and existing environment preserved. Designed to provide a safe environment. They don't do any of those things. Site plan review is also talking about transportation adequacy, and the applicant has said that they plan to have 4 employees and 4.5 trips. And I know we've talked about this a number of times in this context. How many trips is appropriate in terms of the number of trips that we think is likely to occur as a result of bringing a farm and factory operation into this area? The site plan review requires details. They haven't been provided. If they throw out a 4 employees number to you without substantiation, without you understanding the operation, and whether 4 employees is really adequate, you can't get a good sense of what the transportation impacts are. And under site plan review, item K is transportation adequacy. And they have not proven sufficiently that they're actually going to have 4 employees and that that's what's going to be needed. Now we go to my 7th and final argument, and this is critical. I would argue, and I don't do this lightly, that applicant credibility is not established in this case. We have a situation here where the applicant has misrepresented his affiliation with business associates related to business. If you take a look at G, my exhibit, you will see correspondence I've had with District Attorney Hummel. Go, first of all, to the 2nd page, if you would, please, and read along with me. I put this argument in my appeal. The applicant then reached out directly to neighbors in the neighborhood and sent a letter out to all of them defending himself against these claims. And indented in my letter to John is what he said. Regarding the Lapine reference, the father of one of our partners was arrested a few weeks ago for what was thought to be an illegal operation in Lapine. The authorities subsequently realized that he had a pending hemp license, which was granted a few days later. As such, his arraignment was canceled and no charges were filed. I didn't know if this was true or not, so I reached out to District Attorney John Hummel, and I asked him, I read this to him, and I said, is this true? And he said, no. And I said, if I send you a letter, will you respond to me in writing so that I can present it to the board? And he said yes. So here's the letter that I sent to him. Thanks for taking my call this afternoon. I'm representing Rowan Hollitz in his opposition to a marijuana grow operation approval on Walker Road. Applicant Weisheit et al. The applicants include a son of Sam Osman Onat, one of the 2 men arrested in Lapine on February 11th, 2019. The news coverage indicated that Mr. Onat and a Christopher James Fleming were found by code and cert growing nearly 2,000 marijuana plants and possessing 350 pounds of dried marijuana and butane honey oil on a converted 4-garage home with 2 shipping containers in the 52-800 block of Wayside Loop. The news reported also a substantial amount of money and evidence of money laundering on site. Mr. Weisheit claims the report is false. He wrote a letter to Walker Road residents on March 11 claiming, and I included the information I read here. Please advise if Mr. Weisheit's representations are accurate. We are preparing for a public hearing before the BOCC on March 20th. I would like to present any accurate facts to the board at that time regarding associates of the applicant. Thanks in advance for any assistance you can provide. Page 1 is his response. Mr. Weisheit's statement is incorrect. The matter is still under investigation, and I expect to file criminal charges in the near future. Regards, John. The applicant reached out to the neighbors and told them something that was not true. District Attorney Hummel is nowhere near finished with this. And what you have is a situation where they have reached out to the neighbors and told them something that was false. Do you have the right to consider this? Because it's not listed in the Code of Applicable Criteria. The answer is yes, absolutely you do. Exhibit F in my packet is the most recent case from Luba saying what local governments are allowed to do in looking at the credibility of evidence put before them. This is a case that was released February 28th, 2019. The ink is still wet. It's Lee versus Marion County. I will read the summary at the top and the last line at the bottom. Luba is not authorized to second-guess local decision-makers' judgment regarding the credibility of evidence presented in land use hearings. This was a case where a woman who lived in Lake Oswego claimed that she wanted to have a bed and breakfast in Marion County, but she didn't live there all the time. She had a 9-bedroom house, but it was going to be a bed and breakfast. And in the last line of the summary, here's what it says. Luba is not authorized to second-guess local decision-makers' judgment regarding the credibility of evidence presented in land use hearings. The second and third assignments of error are denied, and the county decision is affirmed. Luba defers to you. They ask you to make decisions about which evidence is credible and which evidence isn't. And here we have an applicant who has clearly reached out to neighbors and made statements that are false. I would argue that the applicant's credibility is at question here. And I would ask you to consider the representations that the applicant is making to you in light of that doubtful credibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Questions, Commissioner Malone?
No questions.
Commissioner Dare, any questions?
None at this time. I'll be doing some more research.
And so you got some more time. Are you going to also testify then, Owen, about them as part of the Yeah, I mean, that was your plan. Yeah, go ahead. We may have some additional questions for Ms. Lynn. Whenever we're done.
My name is Rowan Hollitz. I live at 62311 Dodge Road, Bend, Oregon. Kitty corner from the subject property. I'll skip to number 2. Alfalfa Fire Department, Volunteer Fire Department, AFD. I'm one of the founders and was a board member for 5 years. It is my considered opinion that, 1, AFD volunteers have the equipment and training needed to fight wildland and structural fires and be effective first responders to most medical emergencies. 2, AFD volunteers have not been sufficiently trained for potential fires and or explosions at a processing facility, which by its very nature uses volatile chemicals in the process. AFD personnel do not have the authority to inspect processing facilities on a surprise basis to ascertain what chemicals are actually being used for processing, where fire extinguishers are located, storage safety, and other factors. AFD Fire Chief LaValle stated that fire response times from 911 call to rollout ranged from 3 to 4 minutes to 5 to 6 minutes. Adding the average drive time from the station to the proposed Walker Road facility on dry roads in daylight of 3+ minutes means that at best it would be 6 to 10 minutes before any remedial action could be taken, assuming there were no delays getting into the property because of locked gates. This is significant given the potential for devastation from an explosion and fire. And finally, AFD personnel have no prior knowledge of processing plans and chemicals to be used, nor authority to investigate processing operations. They therefore cannot with any certainty certify that they will be able to provide protection. If this application is approved, there exists a significant potential for a disaster that would affect the applicant and the neighbors. Thank you.
I guess I had a question about the fire protection. There's some kind of back and forth with the fire district chief, and it kind of seems like it's incomplete, like there wasn't a final response to some questions asked. Is that accurate, or I may have the scenario wrong? I mean, it's a combination of letters or comments from both parties, but what's your take on that?
The initial response was very cursory. Jacob went back and asked them for more detail because I think he sensed that it was thin. They came back and gave more detail, at which point they said, we don't have the training, we don't have the equipment, we don't have what we need to deal with a factory. And nothing more was said. That's where that is. And Rowan has spoken with them about this at length to try to get them to provide more, and maybe he can provide more information if that's helpful.
The struggle, I think eventually we'll deliberate on this, on the issue of factory. So I'm thinking, a couple thousand feet of a building is 40 by 50, which is, I don't know, maybe the back half of this room or something, the size. I don't know when it gets to, when we talk about a factory or what they don't have capacity for, I guess I don't know what they don't have capacity for.
Excuse me, but I think it's not the capacity, it's the training. What do we do when we go in, and if they're using chemicals? What chemicals are they using? What's the reaction of water on that chemical?
So it isn't the size of it; it's that they're. And what I guess is the creation, I guess, of what would be edibles, maybe instead of just processing.
Exactly.
Plants. Okay.
Alfalfa Fire District knows how to fight wildland fires. They know how to fight structure fires. They know how to respond to a traffic accident, but they have no training, no experience with anything pertaining to chemicals and processing, whatever that may be. They just don't know what it is. Therefore, I seriously am concerned about their ability to fight such a.
And what was the comment about locked gates? Is Walker Road locked as you go down it, or would it just be locked on their property?
The property is represented by the applicant to be completely secured, which to me means fully fenced and locked.
Mm-hmm. The other marijuana growing facilities out in the area have locked gates. Mm-hmm. So you can't just waltz in. Now, whether there's a locked gate here, whether they provide that combination to that gate to the fire department or not, that's all well and good. But depending on how that works, that it just adds time to the response time.
I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Dixon, on your letter from DA Hummel, the top line was eliminated on our copy. And so I'm wondering if I could have a new copy of that letter. Where it says the email.
Oh, yes, I'll get you a fresh copy.
Thank you.
Just because I anticipated, I thought what I heard them discussing when they were talking about the processing was not using chemicals to process. I don't know. I don't know how you do that, and they may talk about that in rebuttal. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's my understanding that there are many ways to process marijuana depending on what you want to make. If you're trying to distill THC out of it or distill CBD out of it, you use different processes. There is a Swiss water process that was developed for decaffeination of coffee that requires 10 to 20 times more effort to get the coffee decaffeinated than the chemical methods. Now, I don't have any information from the applicants. This is the most information we've had on how they intend to process here in the hearing today, to my knowledge. If they intend to make certain products and use special process to make those products, I think it's incumbent upon them to let you know what that is.
One of the, overriding things that we, besides the specific marijuana regulations, is just the fire and safety issues of anything we approve, et cetera. And I guess if we have an open period, if there's nothing in the application about what's going to be processed, I guess that would be something I would see people adding information in the written record, because, I think we are familiar with the processing led to an explosion. I guess I'll call it processing. I don't know if it is, that led to hash oil in Northeast Bend, and where people were severely injured and the house was blown off the foundation. So I don't know what the plan is here, but if there's nothing in the record, it seems like that is something. I don't know if we haven't, like you said, we haven't addressed very much processing, or I don't know if we've any applications where we got into this detail, but.
And Commissioner Henderson, I would ask that if the applicant is going to submit that material, that it be submitted in the first week of the record period, so that we have a chance in the second week to respond to it.
That'd be, I would agree with that.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a previous board member of the fire district, has there been invitations by any of the other operations in the area, in the district, for the fire chief or the responders to see an operation, referring to any growing?
To my knowledge, no. And to my knowledge, there are no other processing operations in the district. Grow operations, yes, but
Yeah, just the grows. Okay.
I thought there was a processing application. I don't know if it ever developed into a facility, but at the Elite Soils, the big grow across, with all the buildings. I thought at what point we saw a processing application for that or something, but which is right there in Alfalfa.
Commissioner Henderson, I was told by Bill Ty, who is now deceased, that they didn't develop that. They had hired some people to do it, and it subsided. I don't know if that's true firsthand.
Okay. Let's see. I just want to see if I had any other questions for the appellant. So the issue of odor control, as you know, Ms. Dixon, is it's come up in several hearings, and I guess what I see it is you're wanting us to use the evidence from another hearing you've submitted. That's a new one on us in terms of we hear about different deals or different methods of odor control, but is there any problem with us doing that from the way you see it, or
no? It's
written documentation, but and it is interesting that other people have said it's not the first individual we've heard from that said carbon filters don't work, and so, but I just wanted to see if there's any question. I would, hopefully the applicant will address that also, but.
It is Exhibit B in my appeal that I filed on 2/19. I put it in the record early intentionally so that if the applicant wanted to deal with it, they could. I'm not trying to hide the ball here. When the testimony was issued, I was quite surprised, but he had good credentials, and he substantiated his argument. So my client is not in a financial position to hire a professional engineer to evaluate it to that level. So I used a marijuana industry professional engineer's expert opinion for evidence to prove that, which I am alleging to you.
Well, I don't have anything else. Thank you for your presentation. Any other comments? Any questions? Nope. Okay. So that concludes, I think, the applicant and the appellant. We have some written requests here to, thank you, to testify here today, and I just have them stacked up. They may be in, let's see. I guess I should probably do it in reverse order. They're stacked up in the way they came in. So we'll start with the Okay, so I think the first one then will be, is it Janet No
Nash.
or Nash? Okay. And if anybody else wants to testify, there's blue sheets over here to fill out. If you can give it to Sharon over here and we'll get to it. Thank you, Janet. And then on deck would be,
I just have one.
I have one. We could share this one here, so. Elizabeth,
I'll sit, but we are this property right here. My husband and I farm 70 acres there. And it's dry land between the property and us. We grow orchard grass hay. My name is Janet Nash, as I stated. There's a lot of issues that you've heard, and we've been hearing them for a long time. None of us are new at this. We understand the whole process. I guess, honestly, as you can see from the picture, we're one corner off from being immediate neighbors, but we are close neighbors. The picture is out my kitchen window, over my back deck, and across our fields. Most summer evenings we spend outdoors. In that, as you can see from the photo, it's wide open, flat ground. And I can hear a half mile away when my neighbors are outside playing. We hear that noise. It travels. The majority of the year, the winds come out of the southwest, which aim it directly at us, whether it be noise, odor, or a fire. It'd be headed straight for us and our neighbors. All around us, there are at least 6 neighbors immediately adjacent to us. I didn't count the ones adjacent to the grow, so you could add it up. The site proposes a 170 by 60 by 24-foot building, which is rather large, requires 16 HVAC units, which will be outdoors and generate noise. The engineer's report lists individual proposed decibel units at the corner of the property, but if all 16 are going on a 90-degree day, the noise is generated is going to be enough to travel to my property. And what recourse do we have when the hum is on and there's no one on the property, the noise is there? Code enforcement hasn't proven itself to be terribly effective so far. We have experienced negative impacts from nearby grows, as you've heard. Some approaching over a mile away, we still get odor on a regular basis. Time you call, and 3 days later someone gets out there, the doors are closed and the odor's gone. And it does seem to happen year-round. There was an incident last week that was very strong. There's also traffic impacts that previous testimony you've heard, other grows in the alfalfa area. When the shift arrives, they back up at the locked gate. When the trucks arrive, they back up at the locked gate because they have to wait to be let in. All those things will create havoc on Walker Road, which is an unpaved, it might be 2 lanes, but it's not a real wide road. And in the past, from the other grows, I don't know if shift workers are generally late, but they're in a hurry to get there. And they go by at a goodly rate of speed. We have had criminal activity out there, some of it attached to illegal grows, some of it attached to legal grows. It is disconcerting. Oh, darn. Well,
go ahead and finish your thought.
Just that it is a public safety issue. You know, we've had SWAT trucks and the sheriff out there in force. That was an illegal grow, granted, but it's a fine line. There are issues of oversupply, saturation of the alfalfa area, water usage. You've heard about our wells, youth activity centers, public land access is just a quarter mile down the road, and the public safety concerns. I would request that you approve the appeal and deny the application.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet.
Next is Wade Hudson.
Not about this issue.
Okay. So, we did public comment earlier today for general comments. Oh,
I'll just wait. If you break up, I can talk to somebody. I just want to talk to somebody.
okay. Okay, thank you. Jacob Onat? So you don't want to speak any further? Or, well, I'm not, I don't know, you kind of were part of the applicant, I guess, I don't know.
Jacob Onat, spoke with you guys a little bit ago. So, we'll delve further into, some of these comments that the appellants have made. But, forthcoming, or moving forward, excuse me, one thing that you guys need to understand is this is all new to you guys. These are rules you guys have just adopted within the last couple of years. You guys are learning along the way. I just told you about carbon filtration, and you're like, oh, it's the first time I've heard that in 2 years, when you guys have been working with licensed, engineers for how long? So that's fine. This is a new industry.
Just so you know, I hadn't heard that it was the only thing allowed in Colorado and Washington. We've had a lot of testimony about carbon filters, but it's just never been put in perspective that way.
So what we're proposing to do here is completely different from what you guys have approved in the past. So a lot of these concerns that people are bringing up, security, traffic, locked gates, this is all. If you go in that area, you're driving at 5 o'clock in the morning, you see big greenhouses, which Mark confused saying that they're glass, they're plastic. So yeah, if you got a big greenhouse that's lighting up the sky and disturbing neighbors, it's easy for someone to come in and slit that open and grab product, right? So they put up these fences and gates. The only reason why they put those up is because that's an OLCC rule. That's not your guys' rule. Or maybe you guys have another rule, but OLCC requires if you're growing outdoors or if the product is able to be visually seen from the road, you have to put up a locked gate. We're putting up a shop no different than the guy down the street that's running a dairy farm. And you wouldn't know what was going on there unless one of the neighbors told you. So, like I said, we're using carbon filtration. I'm pretty confident I'd be willing to bet our license that there will be no smell leaking from this place. All the other neighbors that are, saying that they smell stuff, it's all due to greenhouses. And it's because they're not closed buildings. There's gaps, there's leaks, and these people are putting together, the cheapest structures they can, really quickly, because you guys were processing these applications really easily, and now you guys are starting to realize there's some, issues that neighbors are complaining about. And so when you got an applicant like us who's coming in saying, hey, we're going to do it the right way. In all reality, it should have been the other way around, where people like us should have been licensed initially with a closed building, and then when these other applicants come in, you use us as a standard and say, hey, let's take you through a tour of this facility. And if you guys don't look anywhere near this, we don't want you in this area because you're not contributing. You're just, degrading the area. So I've worked with some of the best, companies in the cannabis industry, the highest grossing companies in California, Washington, and we're following systems and procedures that are above and beyond what you guys require, above and beyond. And the only way to figure that out, obviously, is, to see it. But I mean, we didn't delve too deep into carbon filtration and solvents and all that stuff because we could sit here for hours, but I can assure you that what we're doing is above and beyond what you guys require. I could probably sit down with you guys for 30 minutes and explain, what we're using and probably make you guys implement that future, in the future down the road. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
Steve Paulding? We've got that. Yep, that's right. And then after that would be Nunzi Gold. Did you get a copy? Yeah. Did you get a copy of this? It's right above it, yeah, right north of it.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Pauling, did you submit one packet with your?
I have copies.
Okay, yeah, maybe we'll give it to the other commissioners. If there's anybody else that's planning to testify, I don't have any other, I got one already. and then one for Sharon. If I only have the two other requests to speak, unless I'm missing something. So if you think you've submitted one and I haven't called your name, I guess we can take that up after we're done. But with these two speakers, or if you still want to speak, you'll need to fill out a form and turn it in.
So before I start, I just want to point out where we live. My wife, Carolyn, who's back there, and I.
Mr. Pauly, can you identify yourself in the microphone for the record?
Okay. I didn't want my 3 minutes to start. My name is Steve Paulding. My wife and I live right here, adjacent to the Weissites. I'm a financial crimes risk analyst for Union Bank in California. Our group monitors bank customer transactions for money laundering and terrorist financing. My wife and I own the adjacent property, and a big reason why my wife and I opposed the Weissites application to build a marijuana business next to us on Walker Road can be found in the documentation that I've given you. It contains printed copies of several Oregon public records, which I found on the internet this week. Although the Weissites have led us to believe that they are a family-run business, a mother, Elizabeth, and her two sons, Mark and John, I can find no legal proof that John is included as their Oregon business partner. Maybe we are misunderstood. But I was very surprised this week to discover that their actual business partners included two men connected to the Lapine drug raid, Mustafa Soilame and Sam Onat. Mustafa Soilame owns the Lapine property, and Sam Onat was arrested in the drug raid. I have found 3 legally registered Oregon companies between the Weissites, the Onats, and Mustafa Soilame. High Desert Equity Partners, which consists of members of Mustafa Soilame, Mark Weissite, LM Management Services, LLC, members Mustafa Soilame, Mark and Elizabeth Weissite, Sam and Jacob Onat, and High Desert Agriculture, who has members of Mustafa Soilame, Mark Weissite, Sam and Jacob Onat. Mustafa Soilame also owns the retail store, The Local Market, along with Jacob Onat, who's the son of Sam Onat. It's apparent that Mustafa Soilame is actively involved in the Weissites Walker Road business plans because he was copied on an email on January 19th of this year between Jacob Onat and Jacob Ripper regarding the Weissites marijuana application. During all the communication I've had with the Weissites, they never mentioned Mustafa Soilame or Sam Onat. Instead, in a recent email from the Weissites, they attempted to assure the surrounding alfalfa neighbors that Sam Onat was not involved in the Weissites' plans for the Walker Road marijuana business and that they had no insight into anything he was doing. They say this even though the legal documents show that he is their business partner. We oppose the Weissites' application for a variety of reasons. The potentially negative impact to our property values, to our quality of life, to the alfalfa farm economy and community, and because 2 of their business partners are connected to the drug raid in Lapine, which is under criminal investigation. And we oppose their application because, as we have discovered, we cannot trust what they say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
And these are, and you've given us a bunch of documents, so these are the documents you're referring to in your summary?
Yes,
They're the source documents.
Printouts from Dial that show ownership of the Lapine property, the warranty deed for that property, the warranty deed for the local market property, the articles of incorporation for the companies that I mentioned.
Okay, we'll look through those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay Gould, and is there anyone else that wants to testify after her? That I don't have any more. Thank you. Citizen input requests here, so if you wanted to testify, and I need to get one of those. Thank you.
My name is Nunzi Gould. I live in Deschutes County. I own farmland in Deschutes County. I noticed there's not a sign-in sheet, so I hope that the blue forms get included as part of the record.
They will be.
I'm here regarding the appeal of the Deschutes proposed production and processing. This should be denied. The property has federally owned subsurface rights dating to 1937, as shown by the applicant's own title report submitted in the application. No structures containing a Controlled Substance Act item such as marijuana should be planned over top of federally owned subsurface rights. The property has Walker Road as a right-of-way across the southern portion of the site. All traffic headed to BLM's Juniper Woodland Rec Area trailhead, which is west of the subject property, would travel across this tax lot to reach the public recreation trailhead. BLM planned and perfected this in October of 2008. And this is an example of healthy outdoor recreation in our community and for which our community is known. Please preserve and protect our community by not adding marijuana production and processing so close to this BLM public recreational asset. Fencing. The proposed marijuana production application shows a rail and fence example of a low-post fence with connecting swag chain, which is incompatible with OLCC's 7-foot-tall fence criteria. The fence proposed does not meet OLCC's regulations. The canal system that runs through the property for both water and the right-of-way along the canal, the applicant has not shown how it will exclude individuals allowed to use the COID canal and right-of-way and who do not have an OLCC marijuana handler license. The building official comments that when a building permit is issued, he will then review the plans is insufficient assurance that the hazardous methods of THC and CBD extraction, which are part of production, are safely managed today. These are incompatible with the adjacent neighboring rural county and others, as you've heard testify. There is overproduction in our county and our state. Now, mostly, the hearings officer granted a 2-year window of approval to perfect on their approval. Meanwhile, the Oregon legislature is fast-paced to add more allowances to state regulations. The question is, 2 years from the date of the hearings officer approval, what will be allowed in state law? And basically, your regulations get trumped by their regulations. So you didn't really hear what's planned on this project today. And the question is, what's planned in the 2-year window of your hearings officer's approval? And what would, by Oregon law, be allowed? So I don't think you have sufficient information today to quantify this application. And certainly allowing a floodgate of window for 2 years, as the legislature and OLCC could allow events or could allow consumption or the buses coming to this production site, I think are very relevant today. And lastly,
wrap it up.
There was an interesting article about hemp in the Bend Bulletin, and it showed the distilling systems in hemp. And if you're not familiar in OLCC's rules, is hemp can be processed at marijuana production sites. Marijuana processing sites, I mean. So take a look at those steel canisters, and I didn't have time. The newspaper article actually went into my fireplace before I made a copy of it to deliver to you. But the important thing is that
We got to wrap it up.
this is inappropriate at this location and should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Okay, is there anyone else that hasn't testified that wanted to or hasn't turned into form? Okay, so that, seeing nobody, this will be time for rebuttal by the applicant.
And how much time do we have? Is it 3 minutes also, or?
Typically, we allow 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, it depends on how many. Sometimes people don't want to cover. There's not much to cover if there's specific items.
Okay.
And I would support making sure you're complete. There's no real cutoff, hard
Okay.
cutoff.
Well, we'll try and be brief, but definitely a couple of things we'd like to speak to there. So, I mean, I'll start with what is most important to me, which is our credibility. Can you bring out that letter, please? First, I'd like to say, I mean, I apologize to anybody who feels like we might have lied to them or misled them. That is absolutely not the case. As far as I understand it, everything I said in this letter is true. It may not be the complete story. That information about the DA is new to me. I don't know if I believe it's new to you. We don't know anything about any investigation. In hindsight, we probably should have tried to reach the DA to get his opinion on what was going on. Jacob's father initially introduced, so Mustafa and I went to high school together, so I've known him a very long time. He was the one that sort of brought this opportunity to us and introduced us to Jacob. And Mustafa knows Jacob through Jacob's father, who he had done business with a number of years ago. Jacob's father is listed on the businesses because he introduced us. What does he have, 1.7% or something like that? And we gave him a small share in the business because he had provided the introduction, and he is not involved in the day-to-day operations. I haven't spoken to him in probably well over a year, if not longer. I have no idea what he's doing. I thought he was an auto mechanic. I had no idea what he was doing at this Lapine location. And I know from Mustafa's perspective, he was renting that property to him, and also has no visibility, as far as I know, into what was happening out there. But Mustafa's, how he's explained it to me, was that they had applied for a hemp license, and they were producing hemp, and that hemp license was granted a few days after it was pending, and granted a few days after this raid and this arrest. I quite frankly don't know if, I am not stating that is exactly what was going on. I don't know. I don't have visibility into it. Every statement in here is actually correct. The father of one of our partners was arrested a few weeks ago for what was thought to be an illegal operation in Lapine. That is true. The authorities, say, subsequently realized that, and maybe there was a little presumption there, but as far as I understand it, the authorities didn't know that he had a pending hemp license when they raided it. That was brought to their attention when it was granted a few days later, which is true. As such, his arraignment was canceled. That is true. It was canceled, and no charges were filed. That is true. No charges have been filed. So every statement in my letter is actually accurate. Now, it may not be the complete picture. There may be an investigation ongoing, but I did not say that there was not an ongoing investigation, because I don't know. The other thing I said in this letter, which is true, which isn't copied in here, and I think we submitted a copy this morning to you in our packet of that same letter, is that, and again, I think I said this a minute ago, Sam is not involved in this operation. He's not on this application. There's no plan to include him in this operation. Yeah, and at this point, actually, we've been strategizing about removing Mustafa from it as well, just because he's not been adding value to our partnership. He is involved in the local market as he has a share, and he had a more active role in getting that business up and running. But his role has been declining as we've sort of started building this partnership between the three of us, which is why the three of us are here.
Is he a shareholder in the local store?
Yes. Yes.
What percent ownership?
Yes.
What percent?
Oh, was he at 25?
40. No, 39.
39.
Yeah, so I can explain this. I'm the one who runs local market. Everyone is a partner. So,
like everything that Mark said is true. Mustafa and Mark, they're both tech guys. Like Mustafa, you've done these people have done a lot of research on Google and are bringing up inferences, but I just feel like this whole thing is all based off of inference and not fact. So Mustafa worked at Microsoft. He's a tech guy. Mark's a tech guy. I got introduced to Mustafa through my dad, who they're both Turkish. And so my dad had a Turkish restaurant. Mustafa, at the time was cleaning kitchen hoods. They ended up becoming friends over the years. And so Mustafa knew that I was getting involved in cannabis in Seattle because it was recreational. And we got introduced to Mark and his family. So fast forward a couple of years, Mustafa is our partner on local market. He was in California. His only involvement with that facility was helping me approach Mark, who I didn't know at the time, and pitch a 21-year-old kid this investment so we can open up a dispensary. And so Mustafa helped file the paperwork. We worked with the OLCC. We did all that good stuff. As soon as that place got approved and the keys were opened, they were given to me. And I have been, and anyone in the community can attest. You can read our reviews. I'm the one that's there every day. I'm the one that's operating. We get on a partner call once a week, and they help chat through things and help me. But so in regards to this most recent incident, again, I could be incorrect, but I'm just stating what I know. Mustafa and my father have been growing hemp. They had a pending hemp license, and you guys can Google this as well. This is like a huge problem right now. So hemp looks very identical to cannabis. It smells the same, looks the same. The only difference is when you smoke it, it doesn't get you high. And the only way you can find out is until you smoke it or until you get it tested in a lab. I don't know if you guys heard recently, there was like a 1,000-pound drug raid, just like this news article said, which is all just on, capturing the audience's attention and providing content. And going through the border of Idaho, these big drug traffickers, come to find out it was hemp. Everyone's making these inferences without, making factual statements. So I would hate to see our application get denied. Whether there is a pending investigation or not, I have no part of that. I don't know. If that's the case, then whatever happens will happen. I don't know the specifics, but they had a pending hemp license. My father did get arrested and got put into jail that night. Got released the same day. And like Mark was saying, the day before the hearing, or before you go there and I'm guilty or not guilty, it got canceled. Why? Is because the ODA issued the actual physical copy. And so I think what had happened was, whoever did the investigation or did all that stuff didn't really get their stuff in order, because while that raid was occurring, I was at our dispensary and the OLCC had came in. They did a complete audit on our store, and I was wondering why this was happening. And they said, it happens to everyone once a year, passed with flying colors, passed better than any other dispensary in town, has been operating for many years. And so this has happened many times. So the fact that there's, money laundering and this and that, these are just broad statements that were made to capture an audience for content. And like I said, you can go on Google, and this happened to another gentleman in Klamath Falls. It's a reoccurring theme. Prior to conducting one of these raids, to get a search warrant, they claim to have, money laundering and this and that, to have a wide umbrella. So in case they go in and make a mistake, if there is something there, they have, something to feed onto. So, but moving forward, this application has nothing to do with those people anyway, so I don't even know why it's relevant. This application is for Mark and his mom for the property, for the land use, and the OLCC, which will be then approving us later on, which will be me, Mark, and his mother. So the fact that we were partners with them in another business, even if they were doing something illegal, which we don't know about, which is pending, that has nothing to do with what we're doing.
And I can assure you, if that is the case, we will sever ties with them.
Well, yeah, that's true. But also at the same time, everyone's worried about the black market and this and that. I'm at the dispensary every day. I welcome you guys to come check the place out. If you can somehow find a way to manage to get one bud into our system or out, it's impossible. Everything that we have is barcoded. So when everyone's saying we're worried about product going in or out, you should be worrying about denying these applications, because when you deny these, black market grows continue to operate. We can't push things in or out. That's why we've been approved, audited multiple times and have passed. So I just feel like that part's irrelevant.
So I want to speak to one or two more things. I don't want to take up too much time because I think we can address this in written comments. I know there's a lot of concern about processing and fire. Our plan is to process with solventless extraction, which is based off of ice and water extraction. It doesn't use the butane, which is as far as I understand it, sort of been the cause behind a lot of these fires and explosions.
Can you say that again? I'm hearing
Solvent. Solvent.
So what kind of a solvent is that?
It's water, so water is considered solvent. So there's two types of processing people will use in the industry. The one that they were referring to earlier with that home that exploded was an illegal grow, in all actuality, and it was because they were doing what was called open blasting, just to give you guys a little bit of a background. And that's, generally people who jerry-rig tools and run solvent through, and there's things that can happen.
Solvent is typically hydrocarbon.
Yeah, any solvent can be used, butane, hydrocarbon, anything. So what we're proposing is to do a majority, probably about 70% of our processing, to be conducted in a solventless manner, which means what we'll do is we'll grow some weed, harvest it, put it in a bag, and freeze it. 24 hours later, we're going to get that and put it in a bucket or in a washing machine with ice and water. We're going to turn it on, and it's going to spin for about 30 to 40 minutes. The residual that's collected at the bottom is then dried out. That's it. There's no nasty chemicals. There's nothing that's used. I don't know if you guys reviewed our floor plans. That's in one room. We've actually segregated solventless with solvent, because to be in this industry, you need to also have a solvent. However, the solvent used is very important. Most people with these explosions are using butane. If we do decide to go down the solvent route, we'll use entane. It's a medical grade propane. And, just so you guys know, I don't know if anyone read the burden of proof or narrative that we put together, but the room's layout has spark arresters. It's explosion proof. There's exhaust fans that, hooked up to emergency kick-ons in case they were to go off, for whatever reason. So, at the end of the day, we're doing everything that we can to your guys' code and OLCC code, and we can sit here and, guesstimate all day, well, what if that fails and what if the fire department's not ready? At the end of the day, I spoke many times with Ron Thompson. He said, we will serve your property. He actually was intrigued onto how we were doing it, and he was like, oh, wow, it sounds like you guys are going down a different path. So,
can I interrupt you a second?
Yeah.
So the solvent you're using is what?
We're doing two solvents. One solvent, water. It's technically a solvent. The other one we'd be using would be an entane or a propane mix.
Or are you saying ENTANE? Entane.
Google entane. It's a medical grade solvent.
Just asking how I spell it. So
N, like the letter N, Nancy, and then tane, TANE.
Entane.
And what that is, like I said, it's a medical grade butane.
So it's still butane and.
Correct, but it leaves very little to minimal residual. Like it's able to be used in hospitals for consumption. So.
And you're saying you use 30% of that and 70%
max.
water.
Honestly, we don't even want to use it at all. But if the market's demanding it, we're going to do a little bit. But for the first year, we're going to probably be doing 80%.
The market.
We'll be doing 80% water.
The market seems to be demanding all sorts of things, and the market's demanding butane, hunting oil. I mean, that's what blows up things. So there must be some.
No, butane hunting oil isn't what blows up things. People who don't understand, who don't have a set operating procedure are blowing things up.
Yeah.
I could be incorrect, but I haven't heard of any OLCC licensed, at least in Deschutes County, processing facilities blowing up, because you have to go through stringent engineering requirements to even set one up, unless I'm incorrect.
Anything else you wanted to speak to?
Yeah, I think that probably at this point, one of the best requests I would say is just for the commissioners and staff to make a proposal on leaving the record open, because there are some items that I wanted to address. I just wanted to make two quick comments. The first is that this is the EFU zone. There was some discussion about single-family homes and it being a factory. Processing farm crops, as David Doyle pointed out, is something that happens with farmland. Not at all farm locations, but it is a use that's associated with farming. And just to point out, and this is in our slides, the county even requires applicants for non-farm dwellings. So if you're going to have rural residents in the EFU zone, you have to sign a document that basically says, hey, I know I live in a farm zone and people are going to do smelly things and have noisy equipment, so then they have to sign that under 18-16-050. Again, I'll go into that more in detail during the open record period. And then with respect to credibility, the commissioners don't have the opportunity to deny an application simply because they don't think he's telling the truth. They have to say, I don't think he's telling the truth on this standard, and this is why. They can't just say, I don't like him because I think he's a liar. You know, that goes a lot farther beyond your discretion here. So it would have to be like, I don't think he's telling the truth on odor, or this, or this, or this. And I would submit that all of the standards that have been brought before you today in the appeal are all documented. Then the documents speak for themselves. You know, we can expound on them, we can explain them further, but I think that when you look at the documents themselves, and the staff did a really thorough job, you know, we meet all the standards. So the credibility, I think, is kind of a red herring, not to mention the fact that we're talking about somebody that is not an applicant on the applications before you. This person is not on the documents. This person is not going to be associated with this. And when OLCC does the licensing for this, these proposals, processing and production, they do a background check. They do fingerprints. They do their due diligence because they're not going to be licensing to criminals. So we've got a belt and suspenders here for you. But I have more to say. I think at this point, you know, given the time and everything else, and given the fact that the record probably will be left open, I would just submit that we prepare additional materials and legal argument, maybe under a 777, and Jacob will probably talk on that.
And then just one or two more things I just wanted to address. It won't take longer than a minute. You know, Ms. Dixon was saying, you know, odor is not going to be, you know, these carbon filters are not going to be good enough. Well, if anyone has any other suggestion with proof, you know, factual proof as to what we can use, we're more than happy to do so. You know, we didn't go deep into, you know, our processes and these things because for a site plan review that wasn't required. But we also did submit a 37-page document to the OLCC with everything that you guys are now asking. So maybe you guys make that a requirement. But our carbon filtration, I don't know what everyone else is using, but is a solid block. A lot of people use like granular. So granular leaves open pockets for stuff to pass through. We're using something that's literally a solid block, you know, so nothing can pass through. So that's something that we've, you know, gone even deeper to address that you guys just don't know about. And then as far as the noise goes for air conditioners, again, a lot of these people are using cheap equipment just trying to get stuff set up. Those are low SEER units that are, you know, purchased used off of eBay and hooked up. We're using high efficiency commercial units. And if for some reason we find out that it's, you know, posing an issue, which again, we've had Colbright review, you know, the whole reason why the building's positioned the way it is, as far as the angle goes, was due to noise. Because if it wasn't positioned that way down to a degree, we would have to put up a barrier around these units. You know, we're completely open to, you know, putting in a subflooring and having these units indoors. If everyone's worried about noise or if it poses an issue later on down the road, we can do that. As far as the explosions, we've addressed that. CEC, the landscaping. If you, again, read the burden of proof and narrative, we have addressed landscaping. Per 1,000 square feet of your building, you're supposed to have X amount of landscaping. We've addressed that. That's also issued on there. We got trees around the building. We've, you know, chose a species of plant that blends in harmoniously with the environment. We put in brush and all these kinds of things in the parking lot that conform to, again, I don't remember exactly, but it's a percentage of landscaping per square feet of building. So that has been addressed. And so other than that, you know, they wanted proof that we're going to be producing more than 25%. We're starting off initially with 33%. You're hearing it here. You're hearing it now.
You have calculations.
We have calculations. We just didn't provide that.
Well, it's included in the letter that was submitted this morning.
We have lots of written documents we'll go through so that if it's in the record, we don't need to talk about it now. I do have a question about the noise. I don't recall what it said about the AC units or external. Is it 16, and would those be running at the simultaneously?
They wouldn't be running at the same time. No, that was another thing with odor. You know, they say that they're going to be running for only 15 minutes a day. Well, that's not okay. That's true as far as air that will be leaving the actual facility. 15 minutes a day. These fans will run constantly. So, like Mark was saying, there's rooms inside of the structure. Right. They're closed loop rooms, is what we call them.
I'm not asking them about the fans. I'm asking about the outdoor units.
Yeah, those outdoor units will only run. I mean, I can't tell you exactly how long they're going to run, but they will never be running all at one time. They will never be running half of them at the same time.
Aren't they to different rooms?
Yes, they're on different rooms, but
if it's so, I'm just thinking through this.
Yeah, but
on a hot day, wouldn't you be cooling all the rooms, or what would you be doing?
Again, I would have to go more into detail. These are closed rooms, so the air, when it
goes into the room, it doesn't go right back out. It stays in. So, a general air handler, if you put your hand above it, there's air constantly coming out. It's because it's sucking air out. Our air goes into our room, and it cools until it reaches a certain temperature, and then it stays in there until it gets too hot again. But when it gets too hot again, it doesn't take air, it doesn't kick the air conditioner back on.
Okay, the AC itself is a unit outside that
Correct.
circulates a Freon or something into
Correct.
a cooler. So if you got a hot day and you're running, wouldn't these be working simultaneously for the different rooms?
I mean, I guess you could make that inference if you had very poor insulation and you had poor, quality air conditioners. Off the top of my head, I could probably comfortably say I wouldn't see these things running for more than, on a hot day when a plant's in at its full peak, 12 hours of light a day, I couldn't see them running for more than probably 4 hours, not continuously, but spaced throughout the day.
I'm just looking at, practically speaking, that, if you build a 4,000 square foot house, you might have one air conditioner, you might have two.
Well, the lights put off a lot of
10,000 foot, building, so.
But there's not 16 air conditioners. There's not 16 air conditioners.
And how many are there?
There's one per room, and we only have 7 rooms, 7 flowering rooms.
So we'll look
7 rooms total.
on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your time and rebuttal.
Thank
Jacob,
you.
you want to join us? Yeah, thank you. All right, hi, Nick.
Commissioners, Nick Lelak, Deschutes County Community Development Director for the record. The only issue I want to mention is we will submit a brief memorandum into the record regarding the Youth Activity Center. Part of what you heard this morning was based on what Boundless Farmstead or others had submitted into the written record during the initial application period. We were well aware in early February of the board's forthcoming Wayfarer decision on Youth Activity Center. So we met with the Boundless Farm property owners to ask more details about their activities, their plans for the future, et cetera, which then informed our decision and our interpretation on this. And so I just want to let everybody know now we'll submit a brief memorandum into the record summarizing that meeting, which informed our decision, just so that everybody here can respond to that. If people want to seek any other comments from Boundless Farmstead, they're welcome to do so, either during the initial open record period or during the rebuttal periods, just so that the board can make the best decision possible on the Youth Activity Center. So it's just to clarify how we arrived at our decision on that piece to inform the board.
We'd certainly welcome it. We've got some things in the record that Ms. Dixon had presented, some of the facts and figures type thing. I guess that's what we kind of look at as what it's being called the youth, what constitutes the activity that's going on, who's involved, how it is. So anything you can add, that'd be great. Or if there's anybody else that has something to add on that, that would be fine, I think.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. One other thing, Nick, I remember there was a reference about, we're going to have a work session or something about different odor control systems. Is that something that it seemed like Peter Katowski had worked on, or has that developed fully yet? Or I didn't see it in the record, but
It's in the agenda, isn't it, soon? We're supposed
Next
to.
week.
Yes.
it's next week. So does that come into if we learn something there, does that, as they say, inform our decision here or affect our decision?
It could.
Good. I mean, I don't know what's in it, but
It's on ionization, is it not?
What it is, if it's specific to the systems in use here, there could be an opportunity or necessity to reopen the record to put that in, provide people an opportunity to respond if they choose to.
I think it's
Hard
scheduled
to
for,
tell.
is it
It's kind of
scheduled for next
speculative
week,
because I don't know
Monday or
what's
Wednesday?
involved.
Commissioner Henderson.
Yeah.
Adam Smith, Assistant Legal Counsel. I already recommended that Peter include that documentation in the record for this hearing. I figured based on your work session materials that it would be relevant, and it is scheduled for next Wednesday.
Okay. So for the parties involved, this was a request we'd done because we have a number of these applications, and we're not trained as scientists and really aren't from the industry, but we've learned a lot over 2 years that we've been doing this, so we're just trying to get better informed, and that's what this would be addressing.
So if the written record stays open, is that going to be in the record by the end of this week in preparation for agenda next week?
I believe it's already been submitted, or at least will be in short order for your work
This
session agenda.
I'm just thinking the other
So
parties, so
certainly,
they get to see it.
assuming that you leave the written record open, it will certainly be included in your work session agenda far or several days before the close of that written record.
Yeah, and that's, yeah.
Okay,
Chair
good.
Henderson, can we ask that we have a week after that's submitted into the record so we can look at it in open record? So if it goes in next Wednesday, that would give us 2 weeks of open record before the 7 and 7? We need time to look at it.
Sounded like there was coordination
They
and
both want
agreement
2
by the
weeks.
both. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're
Look at the
coordinating.
yeses on
Well,
both
I was
sides.
thinking it would be additional submittals like anybody else in the first week, and then you'd have the second week. You're asking for an additional week.
But that's just rebuttal. If this report goes in next Wednesday, our time to put open, new information into the record is over. We're gonna need an additional
Right.
week after that report goes in to read it, digest it, respond to it, and put it in
Yeah.
the information in the record if we need it.
I believe that'd be okay for us to do, wouldn't it? That'd be a fourth week, I guess, or
I
we,
see Stephanie shaking her head, so I'm assuming the applicant's amenable to that.
Yes, we would like, as Ms. Dixon would like for her client, the opportunity to review that and then have a week to submit any new evidence argument in response to what the commission considers next Wednesday. So that would be a 14th.
Right, and I'll just repeat it into
Can
the
we do
microphone.
that?
Sounds like there's 2 requests
Yep.
for a 14, 7, and 7, so 2 weeks for new evidence.
okay. I mean, that,
To correct the record, Peter just texted me, I misspoke. It's on next Monday's agenda. So that information will be to you very, very shortly.
Still do 14, 7, 7.
Yeah.
okay, so go ahead, Jacob, with setting the schedule here.
Okay, great.
Some more information. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so with a 14, 7, and 7 schedule, that would be 2 weeks to submit any new testimony or evidence. 2 weeks would end April 4th. The cutoff is 5 p.m., so the county does have to receive those comments by 5 p.m. I'd caution that if you email comments to me, sometimes there's a lag on the county's servers, and even though you click send before 5 p.m., it may not hit my inbox until 10 or 15 minutes later. So send those early. You can also drop off physical copies at the Community Development Department. It's just across the street. And then we do have some submittal guidelines for electronic submittals. You can email me your comments if it's less than 20 pages, if it's in black and white and it's on 8.5 by 11 paper. If it's color, over 20 pages or oversize, I'd ask that you submit physical copies to our office. You can also email those to me as a backup, though. So the first,
Do I need to, I didn't actually close the oral testimony. Do we need,
Clean that up.
after he finishes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, formally close
Okay.
the testimony, keep the record open.
Okay.
okay.
Go ahead and,
Okay, so the initial 2-week period would end April 4th at 5 p.m. The second week would end April 10th at 5 p.m. That's for rebuttal to new evidence submitted in the first 2 weeks. And then the final week would end April 17th at 5 p.m., and that is reserved for the applicant to make final legal argument.
Can you check your map?
yeah, that doesn't,
Is that
seems
not
like
right? Okay.
yeah, something's off there. There's a 6-day period there.
There we go. Back to the old paper.
Yes, paper is always good. I don't know.
So today's March 20th, 2 weeks would put us at April 3rd.
Oh, April 3rd. Okay. Sounds good. And then the 10th, and then the...
And then April 10th and April 17th. Sorry for that.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So, do we need a motion to approve that schedule, or?
You could just simply, you don't need a motion, you could just make the action of the chair to close the hearing
Okay.
and to keep the record open as indicated, 14, 7, and 7.
Okay, so we'll formally close the public hearing for oral testimony now, and we'll leave the open record period of 14 days for new material and testimony, 7 days for rebuttal, and then 7 days for final statement by the applicant. So, thank you all for coming today and bearing with us through the other matters we had prior to that. We have a couple other matters to take up. You're free to join us for that. There are a couple of requests by the Health Department. And I want to take a break real quick, I think.
We take a break?
Take a break.
Really?
So then, yeah. So we've had a request to do that, so we'll take a temporary break. Complete here, and then we'll take up some other items. We'll adjourn to upstairs. So I think the first item is Holly Harris from Health Services, consideration of board signature of resolution 2019-004 appropriating new grant funds. And both of these, as I understand it, came in, or this was a memo we got yesterday. So we're taking this. Wasn't on the regular agenda, but we're adding it on at this point. So that's the one with the, I think it's the 71,000. So that's the first item.
It's the amount.
Thank you.
Because the adjustment has to be for this year's budget.
Okay, great. Okay, Holly Harris, Program Manager, Health Services. Hi, everyone. So we're here today to request approval for the budget adjustment for the Bureau of Justice Assistance Grant, which, as a reminder, is $700,000 over 3 years, which provides case management, substance use disorder services, as well as 20 hours a week of psychiatry services for the Stabilization Center. And it also provides extensive program evaluation conducted by Oregon Health and Science University.
And these are grants that have been awarded at this point, so these are financials in the county accepting them and in place.
Right. So in the researching of this grant, I went back to where the grant application was presented to us I believe it was last May, or maybe it was in September. The original breakdown had about $300,000 being spent in this fiscal year, and we're now authorizing $71,000 of that. Is there a reason the other didn't get spent? I know you didn't get approval till the fall, but I didn't understand why this, is this typical if we get a grant? Are you saying it wasn't budgeted in the last budget, but you want to spend it in this year, and we got it in this year, so you're just saying that's the part of this you want to spend in this year?
It was budgeted in this year's budget. We have not expended it because we've been slowing some steps on implementing the grant because of some of the slowing of processes with the Crisis Stabilization Center project going forward. So we're just sort of keeping a pace. And the reason it's $71,000 is just that's the amount that we would expend this year in this year's
So
budget.
why are you needing to be in front of us today? If it's in the budget, why don't you just spend it? And why do you need to authorize this?
My understanding is that's the county process for budget adjustments, that when we add revenue, we have to request an adjustment of the budget. So the grant funds weren't awarded until October.
Well, but if it's in the budget, then the mechanism that we're actually approving here is actually adding appropriation. If appropriation is already there, then this wouldn't be necessary.
Correct. Sorry.
So
that's correct. So
that's one reason, yeah.
We plan to expend it if we were awarded, and when we receive the grant funds, when we receive confirmation of the grant funds, we have to request a budget adjustment so that there's an appropriation of the funds that we are awarded through the grant.
Well, I
not
thought
being
Administrator
clear.
Anderson was just saying that you don't have to do that you could just spend it. It's in the budget. So
usually if a grant comes up during the course of the year we didn't know about during budget preparation, and we receive the award and we don't have that appropriation in the current year budget, that's when we would actually do a budget adjustment to add it to the current year budget. But since this was budgeted a year ago when the FY 18-19 budget was adopted and the appropriation for this grant was included in the current year budget, then we wouldn't need to add any appropriation in order to spend it.
So I think I need Dave Inbody's expert input here because he puts our budget together.
I don't believe it was budgeted.
Okay.
No, it says it was, but it wasn't awarded till September 26th. So how could it?
Well, the application, but the grant application was before that, so it could have been a budgeted, so.
Often we will, if we anticipate that we will be awarded, just to avoid, in fact, this situation, we can include the appropriation on both sides, so it balances, so it's a wash, revenue and expense, and then we don't have to go through an adjustment. It's, again, this exercise is usually for new ones that came up that weren't anticipated when the budget was done.
So if I may, the reason that we're here today was that I understood that Mr. Kropp met with Commissioner Henderson, and there were a series of questions that had to do with the grant streams, and that seemed to be the appropriate response at this time.
Yeah.
This has been awarded, but we haven't expended against it to ask for this.
So to clarify that, if this is in the budget, which it may be, I guess we'll have to find that out. I agree with what Administrator Anderson's saying. I didn't have any questions about whether you're entitled to spend that grant. What I have is some other questions about representations about that grant that I'd like to discuss with you further. But this, in terms of this request that we authorize this resolution, I don't want to do it until you're sure you need it. I mean, it doesn't seem necessary, and the fact that it's brought up under an emergency thing, and it had to get on the schedule today when it could have been on the schedule next week or whatever. So to me, I'm just trying to clarify why you're in here doing this today. And in the future, if you have questions about something that I've asked Mr. Kropp about, it wouldn't be necessarily on this. Maybe we should meet about what I had the questions with Mr. Kropp about separately, because this wasn't what I was asking about. So let's hear what we hear from Mr. Inbody. Thank you.
The request that we deemed as urgent to address today was not this one.
Yeah.
It's the one with it about CCBHC funds.
Okay, well, you referred to this one, so I'd like to finish this, Dr. Conway. So, Mr. Inbody, we have a question about the first grant request, which is the funds, the $71,000 funds, which were part of the Justice grant.
Whether we had any of this in our budget, in our
It says the jail diversion.
No.
Well, psychiatrist.
So I went back and looked at when this grant was requested, and it was requested, I believe, last spring, and I believe it was in May, and we approved it then. And so wasn't it included in the budget for this fiscal year? Because the actual request was for $300,000 to be spent in this year, and this is $71,000. So I want to verify that it wasn't in that budget already, because we shouldn't be doing this if we don't need to do this. If it's already in the budget, you can just spend it.
Right.
And that's what Administrator Anderson's confirmed.
And part of the confusion that we had was that we had originally done the budget with the expectation that we'd be setting up January 1st, right? That we would start this. But we have to wait until the stabilization center is set up to do the bulk of the work. Essentially, the position that we're looking to hire, there's no reason to hire it today if we don't have the stabilization center for them to work in.
I'm fine with having a discussion about a stabilization center in a separate meeting. The question is whether this request to spend the $71,000 needs to be done by an authorized resolution, or whether it's already in the budget for this year and you can go ahead and spend it. Because the original request showed $300 and some thousand to be spent in this year. So I'm thinking it may be in there, and they thought maybe it was in there. So we need to know whether that is in there.
It's not in. That's actually what this budget adjustment is for. And I believe, and Holly probably knows the grant better than I do, but I believe this is to cover the costs of the work with, is it? Oregon Health. Yeah. So they're doing a lot of this upfront analysis or setting parameters for us to review to see if the work that we're doing. Right. That's really the only
When did that
thing we're
work
doing.
start?
That started in January.
Okay, so it's the middle of March, and you're asking for financing that started in January, did you just discover that you didn't have this authorized, and that's why you're in front of me today?
The biggest reason was we weren't sure when we were going to start this, because we were, up until, it was like December or January, we weren't sure if we were even going to accept it. Because if we couldn't meet the needs of this grant, we wouldn't have accepted it. And part of it was, could we get an extension from the grantor to allow us to extend the time that we provide these services? Because their expectation was that we'd start this work within the fiscal year, which that's what the 300,000 was going to represent.
Well, that's all new information. That's all new information that now we're 2.5 months into the year, and you're saying something you started getting work for in January. You weren't sure you were going to be able to do it, but you started it, and then you're wanting the money now. I don't have any problem with you getting the money. And like I said, I'm surprised you haven't spent more than this, so that I'm fine with the 71. I just don't know that it isn't in the budget, so I just want to verify that. If it isn't in the budget, I'd entertain a motion to support this, and unless there's other comments, but those are my comments.
And Commissioner Henderson, just to clarify, the work that's been done so far was just starting a contract process, a contract negotiation. No actual service has been provided yet by the contract vendor, and no money has been expended. So that we were really getting to the point where that was going to become critical, and that's part of what prompted moving this budget adjustment forward.
So we'll verify that. Somebody will independently verify that it's not in the budget. And so, any other comments?
Last year, we signed a resolution supporting the Stepping Up initiative, which gave guidance to our staff that we're going to proceed down these paths. And now it is kind of fits and starts about, and I can see that that's probably what's going on here. We've committed to doing something. We received a grant, but we're not sure about the facility, so it is just a little bit of timing issue here.
Well, what's not clear to me is that we need a facility before we can do this work. A lot of the stuff we're doing, and if it was in the deal that we were going to spend 300,000 of it, that kind of makes me wonder why when we applied for the grant we thought we'd spend 300,000 in the first year, because we applied in May of last year. We certainly didn't have a stabilization center planned, ready to set up in the fall and the winter. So the original request, and I've got it upstairs, was to spend 300. So I'm not sure that you need a center to do these services. But regardless, I'm willing to spend this. I just wanted to make sure we needed to do it. So, do you have any comments?
None.
So, okay. So I'd entertain a motion supporting this with the caveat that only if it's necessary.
Well, this is an appropriation for the budget, so I mean, it would be an allowable appropriation that if it's not spent or, whatever, there'll be resolution after the fiscal year to kind of document how it was spent, is my point. Yeah. But, so now I need to make sure I'm looking at the right one.
And it's actually 79,000?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
761.
For outside services.
I'll move board signature of resolution number 2019-004, appropriating new grant funds.
You want to say the number too, or not? I mean, because they're giving us.
In the amount of $79,761.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
So the second item in front of us is appropriating new grant funds in the health services budget. And this was with regard to the CCBHC and the expansion, as I understand it. Okay. And this, in contrast, probably wouldn't have been in the budget because we hadn't applied for the expansion or extension grant at that time we did the budget. Is that correct?
We had applied.
We had applied, but
yes,
we didn't know if we were getting it.
absolutely, but we were not certain whether or not we were going to receive grant funds, and so those positions were not budgeted.
Well, actually, that's, ironically, it's the other way around for these. These are positions where we had actually, the grant was supposed to expire the end of March. And as part of the budget, the current budget process, we had extended those positions through the end of the year with the understanding that if we didn't get this grant, then we would eliminate all of these positions. So that's why this number is so small. Essentially, all the positions are in our budget, but if we hadn't gotten this grant, they would have been eliminated at the end of this month. So we don't technically need approval for the additional ability to spend. We have that in our budget already. but the grant dollars are actually going to backfill that for us, so we can actually spend the dollars. We have money to spend. This represents one position that we had actually eliminated in our fiscal year 19 budget that came back as part of this grant funding. So it wasn't actually in our budget, which is a peer support specialist.
The specific amount of $181,000.
Well, it's slightly less than that. And then I would want to see what other, I think there's some administrative costs associated. You can see things like travel, office supplies, conferences, seminars.
What's the contracted services?
90,000.
89,000.
Yeah. I'm not.
And a program expense of 40.
That is for the PSU evaluation team.
So just a background on this grant and the one we just talked about. Most of the federal grant streams for the last 20-odd years have required an evaluation component. So that's why we're talking about the prior one and this one, and it tends to be moderately expensive to be able to do that at the scale that's required.
So I guess I misunderstood this. I thought that, so this is really, is this, the expansion starts, what, April 1st?
April 1st.
Well, technically, it started October 1st, but because it was overlapping with the other grant, we're not paying for any positions until April 1st.
Right.
They're being paid out of the old grant until the end of March. The new grant payment for that doesn't start until April.
So that's 3 months of an employee. That's the 8,000. And then, but that's not the majority of this deal. This is something new that was allowed under the new grant that wasn't allowed under the old grant, or what's?
These are things in the new grant that we didn't budget for, because basically all we budgeted for in this year were the positions in this last quarter. So anything that we got in the new grant that wasn't positions is included at that's what the bulk of this is.
Okay. Does that make sense? So
Maybe that Janice will want to elaborate on this, but the scope of, even though it's called an expansion grant, is very different and actually much narrower than the fundamental funding that was provided in the initial 2-year funding, which included a substantial reimbursement toward services on a capitate basis. This is only prospective funding for identifiable expenses, like the personnel we're talking about now. So it's a much narrower scope, and it's confined to certain things.
Yeah. So, so this is, and you've explained that when you were doing the expansion, that it was a different extension, it was a different program. And then, and you're just saying these are some monies that weren't in our budget for fiscal year 2019, that you have the money, or you're getting the money from CCBHC, so you need, like you said, it's the opposite of the first one we discussed. Okay, so I have no questions about that. Was this so the one? Yeah. Okay. So I have one other thing after we get done. So
I just have one question. Okay, you said that the contracted services were the PSU evaluation team. Yes. So what is the program expense then of $40,000?
Where are you seeing that?
Oh.
Sorry.
Under appropriations?
I don't.
The 181. You know, you've got the revenue of 181,000, but then under appropriations, it's right after contracted services. It's the second most expensive item.
Those are usually
Is that for
unanticipated costs associated with it. I mean, I see their office supplies are called out, but typically it's things like that.
Office supplies?
Office supplies, computers, whatever the anticipated costs are that we wouldn't be aware of at the time that we submit the grant.
Okay. And I don't have the detail. I just have this in front of me, but I'm curious whether or not some of that was also the rent amount under program expense.
It lines up with the 40,000 in the box above that it's labeled indirects.
And that probably is what it is.
Yeah.
Because that was 160,000 a year. So
Yes.
that's a good catch. That's probably what that is.
There you go.
I'm just thrown that it was called program expense.
entertain a motion to for board signature resolution 2019-005.
I move that we approve board signature for Resolution 2019-0005, appropriating new grant funds into Health Services 2018-2019 budget.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. So the final thing I want to know is why was it urgent to get these done today as opposed to next week, which is when they're scheduled? I mean,
If I may.
yeah.
So we wanted to have assurance that we were solvent before we started paying someone. And the principal in this application was Janice Garceau, and likewise, the principal in the BJA one that we just talked about was Holly Harrison. They both will be out of town next week. So in order to meet a April 1st payroll obligation, we wanted to be sure that we had absolute clarity about the use of the funding stream prior to that. So Mr. Embody will need to pass along a fiscal to finance that identifies this as being the thing against which the salary will
So
be.
the
we will need to-
government one, or the first one we did, the 79,000, is going to OHSU primarily, and
This year.
and when are you going to start with them? When do they start working for you?
I'm going to let Holly answer that, actually.
I thought this was your.
No,
This is the one you're correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the Bureau of Justice Administration.
Right.
The smaller grant.
Yeah, so we waited until about February, actually it was about February when they started to kind of have conversations with us. And so we have 6 months from January 1st to complete the implementation guide for the grant. That's per the grant requirements. So we can only wait so long before they have to start doing some work. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to complete it by July. And so they've done some preliminary interviews, and we actually have
those things you have to pay them for?
Yes.
So we have started work. So I'm just wondering, I mean, one of the comments I want to make is that, more than any other department, we get things where it has to be done today or whenever from the health department. Other departments don't do this as much. And there was this need to get this in the agenda today. And if we're already started work, does it matter whether we did it today or next week or the following week? So I just want to bring that to your attention. I'm glad we got it done. It works for your schedule, but just be cognizant of that we really don't get this kind of thing from other departments nearly the same. So,
If I may, we
Yeah.
were assured last week that another portion of the county government had forwarded this information. And we only became aware of it yesterday or the day before.
Okay.
It had not, in fact, happened. So we are aware.
Another what? Another what?
Another department within the county had reassured us they had sent this information, forwarded this information.
For these grants? Okay. All right. Well, good. We can get it done.
We are aware of the docket requirements, and we did our best to respect that. I'm sorry that this has occurred, but it's not that we're insensitive.
Thank you.
And just to clarify on the CCBHC grant, the critical nature of the timing is that because we have people operating under a new grant beginning April 1st, we needed to provide them with offer letters before they start that work. I mean, technically, they have offer letters that are saying that their positions are being covered through March 31st of this year. So in order to get those positions, we wanted to be able to give offer letters to the people that are in these positions prior to April 1st.
I see. Okay. Looks like you'll be able to do that. So that's great.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I did, commissioners, forward, or actually Dave Embody forwarded the budget for the grant application request that Elizabeth Holden and I were here presenting on earlier. So there is a preliminary budget there. If you want to ask any questions about it, I can stick around.
It'll be in our email, you're saying?
No, I just sent it to Sharon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't anticipate we're going to do that today, but
Okay.
Maybe we'll get it done by next week, take a look at it. And so I think you heard our thoughts today were that you should continue proceeding with what you're working on, but we need to, we'll look at the numbers to do your fine. If it takes hundreds of hours or whatever to develop an application, but so.
Okay.
I think what we're looking for is the kinds of things we're seeing in some of these other applications where it's, and the $700,000 grant is an example of that, where it was kind of spelled out when that was requested, what it was for, and so we can see where it's going. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I have a few other things to do, but we thought we'd adjourn upstairs and talk about those. Okay, thanks.